The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through stars, planets, and the very fabric of space itself. For thousands of years, the Jedi had studied this mystical field, learning to sense disturbances in its currents, like ripples across still water. But what happens when something crashes into the galaxy that doesn't touch the Force at all? Something that burns with a different kind of energy entirely, raw and untamed and impossibly bright? The twin suns of Tatooine blazed overhead as they had for billions of years, baking the endless dunes into waves of shimmering heat. In the vast emptiness of the Dune Sea, where even the hardy Jawas rarely ventured during the peak heat hours, the air itself suddenly screamed. Reality tore open for the briefest instant, not a hyperspace exit, not a ship's approach, but something else entirely. A column of golden light punched down from the cloudless sky like the fist of an angry god, and where it struck the sand, the desert exploded. The shockwave rolled outward in a perfect circle, fusing sand into glass and sending a mushroom cloud of dust half a kilometer into the air. When the thunder faded and the dust began to settle, a crater 30 meters wide marked the impact site. At its center, one hand pressed against the scorched ground, knelt a man. Goku pushed himself upright, shaking his head to clear the ringing in his ears. His orange gi was torn in several places, and his body ached in ways that told him he'd pushed instant transmission way too far. And the technique was supposed to lock onto a familiar Kie signature and transport him instantly. But in the middle of that fight with the new enemy threatening Earth, something had gone catastrophically wrong. He'd felt himself pulled not just across space, but through something else, something that had stretched and compressed him simultaneously, like being squeezed through a tunnel that existed in too many dimensions at once. "Okay," he said aloud, his voice hoarse. "Where am I?" He stood fully and looked around, and his heart sank. Desert. Nothing but desert in every direction, stretching to horizons that shimmered with heat distortion. 2 suns hung in the sky. 2 suns, which definitely wasn't right. Earth only had one. Goku closed his eyes and extended his senses, searching for any key signature he recognized. Krillin, Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta, anyone. The technique he'd honed over years of training let him feel the life energy of every living thing within range, from the mightiest warrior to the smallest insect. What he felt made his eyes snap open in confusion. There were life forces out there, thousands, millions of them in fact, scattered across distances his senses could barely comprehend. But they were wrong. Not wrong like evil Kai, but wrong like they operated on a completely different frequency. They were there, he could sense them, but it was like trying to hear a conversation through thick walls. Muffled, distant. And there was something else. Something that permeated everything like background radiation. Not key, but similar. An energy field that seemed to connect everything in ways he'd never felt before. "This isn't Earth," Goku muttered, stating the obvious to himself. "This isn't even my universe, is it?" A distant sound caught his attention. Engines, mechanical, and whining. He turned to see a massive vehicle crawling across the dunes about 2 kilometers away. It was like nothing he'd ever seen. A gigantic treaded fortress covered in rust-colored metal panels, easily 40 meters tall, bristling with cranes and collection arms. As he watched, it stopped near an outcropping of rocks and tiny figures. Were those robots? Scurried out to investigate something. Before Goku could decide whether to approach them or keep searching for answers, a different sound made him tense. A howling, ululating cry that echoed across the dunes. He turned to see figures rising from behind a nearby ridge. Humanoid shapes wrapped in layers of brown cloth. Faces hidden behind strips of fabric and strange goggle-like eye coverings. They carried weapons that looked like primitive rifles, and they were pointing those weapons directly at him. Goku raised his hands slowly, palms out in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hey, I don't want any trouble. I'm just lost," and one of them fired. The weapon made a sharp crack, and Goku's combat instincts took over. He moved faster than human eyes could follow, and the projectile passed through the space where his head had been a microsecond before. Except, it wasn't a projectile. It was a beam of red energy that scorched the sand behind him into glass. Energy weapons, Goku observed, impressed despite the situation. Okay, that's new. The creatures howled again and opened fire in earnest. A dozen beams of red energy lanced toward him, and Goku began to move in earnest. He didn't fly. Not yet, that might scare them even more. But he dodged with the skill of someone who'd spent his entire life in combat. Left, right, ducking, weaving, each movement precise and minimal. The beams struck sand, stone, and empty air, but none found their target. One of the creatures, Goku was pretty sure they were some kind of desert raiders, charged at him with what looked like a metal club raised high. Goku waited until the last possible second, then simply stepped aside and caught the creature's wrist as it swung. He didn't squeeze hard, just held it firm. The creature struggled, making sounds that might have been words in a language Goku didn't understand, then suddenly went still. Through the gap in its face wrappings, Goku saw very human-like eyes staring at him with what might have been fear. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Goku said firmly. He released the creature's wrist and stepped back, hands raised again. "I'm just trying to figure out where I am." The raiders seemed to have a quick conference, making sounds that were definitely some kind of language. Then, as one, they turned and ran, disappearing over the dunes faster than Goku would have expected given their bulky clothing. Within seconds, they were gone, leaving only tracks in the sand. Goku stood alone in the crater, twin suns beating down on him, and took a deep breath. Wherever he was, whatever had happened, he needed to find civilization. Real civilization, not desert raiders. He needed to find someone who could explain this place. And more importantly, he needed to figure out how to get home. Chi-Chi was going to be so mad if he missed dinner. He looked up at the twin suns, feeling their energy wash over him. It was strange, different from Earth's sun, but not in a bad way. If anything, he felt energized. His Saiyan physiology was already adapting, drawing strength from the stellar radiation. Whatever this place was, at least he wouldn't be powerless here. Goku bent his knees slightly and, with a small application of ki, lifted off the ground. Flying always felt natural, like the most obvious thing in the world. He rose about 50 meters into the air and slowly rotated, scanning the horizon. There, in the distance, he could see structures, buildings clustered together, maybe a town or city. And that giant vehicle he'd seen earlier was heading in that general direction too. "All right," Goku said to himself, a small smile crossing his face despite the situation. "Let's go see what this place is all about." He shot forward through the air, leaving a trail of disturbed sand in his wake, unaware that his arrival had already been noticed by forces far more powerful than desert raiders. In a cave not far from the impact site, an old man in desert robes sat up from his meditation, his weathered face troubled, and far above the planet, in the depths of space, a massive triangular warship received a report of unusual energy signatures that defied all known sensor readings. The galaxy far, far away was about to meet something it had no framework to understand, and Goku, lost and alone in an unfamiliar universe, was about to learn that not all battles could be won with strength alone. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The cave dwelling carved into the Junlin wastes had been Obi-Wan Kenobi's home for nearly 2 decades, and in all that time, he had felt many disturbances in the Force. He had sensed the births and deaths of Tatooine's scattered population, the occasional passage of Jedi hunters who never quite located him, and the ever-present dark shadow of Vader's existence lurking somewhere in the galaxy. But what he felt now was something entirely different. The old Jedi Master stood at the entrance to his cave, one hand resting on the rough stone wall, his eyes closed in concentration. The disturbance had struck like a bell being rung inside his skull, a sudden violent impact that had sent shockwaves through the Force itself. But the aftermath was even more perplexing. Where the impact had occurred, there was a presence. Not a Force-sensitive presence in the traditional sense, but something that occupied space in the galaxy with an intensity that made it impossible to ignore. It was like staring at a star with the naked eye, bright, burning, and utterly unlike anything organic should be. Most curious, Obi-Wan murmured, stroking his beard. He had felt power before, Anakin's raw potential, Yoda's refined mastery, even Palpatine's corrupted strength. This was different. This presence didn't touch the Force at all. Yet it existed with such vital intensity that the Force seemed to flow around it like water around a stone, an absence that was simultaneously overwhelming. He had been watching over young Luke Skywalker from a distance, waiting for the right moment to begin the boy's training. That moment was fast approaching. He could feel it in the currents of destiny that flowed through the Force. But this new element, this impossible presence, could complicate everything. Or perhaps, Obi-Wan thought with the wisdom of age and painful experience, it was exactly what the galaxy needed. The old Jedi retreated into his cave and began gathering supplies. Whatever had arrived on Tatooine, it was moving toward one of the settlements. Maz Eisley, most likely. And if Obi-Wan's instincts were correct, and they usually were, this being would not go unnoticed for long. Goku descended toward the settlement as the twin suns began their slow arc toward the horizon. The town, if you could call it that, looked nothing like any place he'd ever seen. The buildings were squat, dome-shaped structures that seemed to grow out of the sand itself, colored in shades of tan and brown that blended with the desert. Technology was everywhere. Strange vehicles that hovered above the ground without visible means of propulsion. Mechanical beings that walked on two legs like humans, but were clearly robots, and people of dozens of different species moving through narrow streets. Different species. Goku's eyes widened as he took it all in from his aerial vantage point. He'd fought aliens before. Namekians like Piccolo, the various warriors in the otherworld tournaments. Even the Saiyans technically counted as aliens. But he'd never seen such diversity in one place. Humanoids with tentacles growing from their heads, short wrinkled creatures in brown robes, tall, elegant beings with skin in shades he'd never seen on any human, and dozens more he couldn't begin to categorize. He landed in a quiet alley between two buildings, touching down lightly enough that his boots barely disturbed the sand that had accumulated there. Immediately, the smell hit him, a mixture of spices, machinery, animal musk, and something cooking that made his stomach growl despite its alien origin. Goku had learned long ago to never turn down food, and whatever was making that smell, he wanted to try it. He stepped out of the alley and into the main street, trying not to stare too obviously at everything around him. Almost immediately, he realized his orange GI made him stand out. Most people here wore robes or practical clothing in earth tones, and many carried weapons openly at their hips. Those same energy guns he'd seen the raiders using, along with blades and other items he couldn't identify. A small, wrinkled creature in a brown robe bumped into him and immediately began speaking in a rapid, chirping language, gesturing at a tray of mechanical parts it was carrying. Goku smiled and bowed slightly. "Sorry, I don't understand. I'm new here." The creature's large eyes blinked, then it switched to a different language. Still nothing Goku recognized. After trying a third language and getting only apologetic shrugs from Goku, the creature made a dismissive gesture and shuffled off, muttering what were probably curses. Goku wandered deeper into the settlement, drawing curious glances but not outright hostility. The town had a frontier feel to it, like everyone was too busy with their own problems to worry much about strangers. He passed what looked like a marketplace where vendors sold everything from glowing crystals to chunks of meat from animals he'd never seen. His stomach growled again, louder this time. A humanoid with blue skin and elaborate headtails noticed him staring at a food stall and called out in accented but understandable words, "You speak basic?" Goku's head snapped toward the speaker, relief flooding through him. The words had been strange, but somehow his mind had translated them into something he understood. Yes, I think so." The blue-skinned being smiled, revealing pointed teeth. "Your accent is terrible, but yes, you're speaking basic. You must be from very far out in the Outer Rim. What brings you to Mos Eisley, stranger?" "Mos Eisley? Is that where I am?" Goku approached the being, grateful to finally have someone to talk to. "I'm looking for someone who can help me. I'm kind of lost." "Lost?" The being laughed. "Friend, People come to Tatooine to get lost. If you're looking to be found, you've come to the wrong dust ball." The being's expression turned more serious, and its eyes flicked to the alley behind Goku. "Word of advice, stranger. Keep your hand near your blaster. Mos Eisley isn't kind to the unprepared." Goku looked down at his empty hands. "I don't have a blaster." "Then you're either very brave or very stupid." The being shook its head and walked away, leaving Goku standing alone in the street. Before he could decide where to go next, a commotion erupted from a building ahead. The door burst open and a humanoid figure stumbled out backward, clearly having been shoved. He was young, maybe early 20s in human terms, with shaggy blonde hair and clothes that marked him as some kind of farmer or laborer. Two larger beings followed him out, thuggish types with scarred faces and the confident swagger of bullies who'd never been properly challenged. "Your family owes Jabba money, farm boy," one of them growled in that same language Goku could somehow understand. "And since your uncle won't pay, maybe we take it out of your hide." The young man, little more than a boy really, raised his hands defensively. "We don't owe Jabba anything. My uncle paid that debt 2 seasons ago." "Jabba says different." The thug cracked his knuckles. "Now, we can do this easy or hard." Goku felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen this scenario play out 1,000 times across his life. Strong people picking on the weak simply because they could. Didn't matter what planet he was on or what universe he was in. Some things were universal, and bullies were one of them. He started walking toward the confrontation, his instincts overriding any concern about drawing attention. The young man saw Goku approaching and his eyes widened slightly, though whether in hope or fear, Goku couldn't tell. One of the thugs noticed Goku's approach and turned. "Move along, stranger. This doesn't concern you." Goku stopped a few meters away, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. "Seems to me you're 2 grown men threatening someone half your size. Where I come from, that makes you cowards." The street had gone quiet. Goku could feel eyes on him from every direction. People watching from doorways, from windows, from the shadows. The thugs looked at each other, then back at Goku, and began to laugh. "You don't know who you're dealing with, do you?" The larger of the 2 thugs stepped forward, pulling a wicked-looking vibroblade from his belt. "We work for Jabba the Hutt. That name mean anything to you, stranger?" "Nope," Goku said cheerfully. "But I know a bully when I see one." The thug's face darkened. "Last chance. Walk away or—" He lunged forward with surprising speed, the vibroblade humming as it sliced through the air toward Goku's throat. To anyone watching with normal reflexes, the strike would have been too fast to follow. But to Goku, who had fought beings that moved faster than light itself could travel, the thug might as well have been moving in slow motion. Goku caught the thug's wrist mid-strike with 2 fingers, stopping the blade centimeters from his neck. The thug's eyes went wide with shock, then wider still as Goku applied the gentlest pressure, just enough to make him drop the weapon. The vibroblade clattered to the sand. Like I said, Goku released the thug's wrist and stepped back. "Where I come from, picking on people weaker than you makes you a coward. Maybe you should apologize to the kid and move along." The second thug had pulled out one of those energy weapons, a blaster, the blue-skinned being had called it. He pointed it at Goku with shaking hands. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The shot came faster than normal eyes could track, but Goku had already moved. The red bolt passed through empty space, and before the thug could process what had happened, Goku was standing behind him, tapping him on the shoulder. "Please don't make me hurt you," Goku said quietly. "I really don't want to." Both thugs scrambled backward, their faces pale beneath whatever skin tone they naturally possessed. They looked at Goku like he was a demon that had crawled out of the desert, then turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of streets without another word. The young man Goku had defended stared at him with an expression of pure awe. How did you move like that? Are you a Jedi?" "A what?" Goku tilted his head. "No, I'm just me. You okay?" Before the young man could answer, a weathered hand touched Goku's shoulder. He turned to find an old man in desert robes standing behind him, though Goku hadn't heard him approach. The man had a kind face lined with age and wisdom, a white beard, and eyes that seemed to see far more than they should. "That was well done, young man," the old man said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. but I'm afraid you've attracted attention that even you might find troublesome." Goku studied the old man and felt something he hadn't felt since arriving. A connection. Not Kai exactly, but something similar. This man touched that strange energy field Goku had sensed permeating everything, and he wielded it with the skill of a master. "Who are you?" Goku asked. The old man smiled. "My name is Ben Kenobi, and I think, my friend, that you and I need to have a very long conversation." The cantina was exactly the kind of establishment Goku would have avoided under normal circumstances. Dark, crowded, smelling of alcohol and something chemical he couldn't identify, filled with beings of every conceivable species, most of whom looked like they'd seen too many fights and caused twice as many. But Ben Kenobi had insisted it was the best place to talk without being overheard, and something about the old man's calm confidence made Goku trust him. They took a booth in the back corner, shadowed enough for privacy, but with clear sightlines to the exits. Goku noticed Ben positioned himself, so his back was never to the room. Old warrior habits, Goku recognized. He'd seen Master Roshi do the same thing. "So," Ben said once they'd settled, his eyes studying Goku with an intensity that felt like being measured by an invisible ruler. "You claim you're not a Jedi, yet you move with speed and reflexes that would shame most masters I've known. You disarmed two armed thugs without breaking a sweat. And more importantly," he leaned forward slightly, "you don't exist in the Force. Yet somehow, you occupy it with a presence I can't begin to explain." Goku scratched the back of his head, a nervous habit he'd never quite broken. "Yeah, about that. I'm not really sure how to explain this, but I'm not from around here. Like, really not from around here. Different universe, I think." He expected skepticism, maybe outright disbelief. Instead, Ben simply nodded slowly. "That would explain a great deal. The Force has been unsettled since this morning. A disturbance unlike any I've felt in 40 years of studying its mysteries. That was you, wasn't it?" "Your arrival?" "Probably," Goku admitted. "I was trying to use a technique called instant transmission. But something went wrong. Instead of moving across my world, I think I moved across everything. Ended up in a desert crater. Got shot at by some guys in wrappings, and now I'm here." He paused. "What's the Force?" Ben's eyebrows rose slightly. "You truly don't know? The Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Those sensitive to it can use it to enhance their abilities, sense the future, even influence the minds of the weak-willed." Goku's eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, that's like Kai." "Well, sort of. Kai is life energy too, but it's inside you. You can control it, use it to make yourself stronger, faster, shoot energy blasts." He cut himself off, realizing he might sound crazy. But Ben was nodding again, that measuring look still in his eyes. "This ki you speak of, can you show me?" Goku glanced around the cantina. Nobody was paying them any attention, most patrons absorbed in their own drinks and conversations. He held out his palm face up and concentrated, gathering just a tiny fraction of his power. A small ball of golden energy materialized above his hand, glowing softly, casting flickering light across their booth. Several heads turned their direction. The bartender, a being with 4 arms, and a face that looked like a squid, made a warning gesture. Ben waved a hand dismissively at the bartender in a way that made the being simply turn back to his work, seemingly forgetting what he'd just seen. "Fascinating," Ben breathed, staring at the Kai ball. "It's not the Force, but it's similar. Like a cousin, perhaps. Energy from life, shaped by will." He looked up at Goku. "You're tremendously powerful, aren't you? Not just by the standards of wherever you're from, by any standard." Goku let the ki dissipate and shrugged uncomfortably. "I've trained my whole life. Where I come from, there are others as strong or stronger. But yeah, I guess I'm pretty strong." "Pretty strong," Ben repeated with a slight smile. "The understatement of the millennium." His expression grew serious. "Which means you need to understand something crucial about the galaxy you've found yourself in. Power like yours will attract attention. Dangerous attention. The Empire controls most of known space, and they have agents who hunt beings with unusual abilities, Force sensitives especially. Empire? Goku leaned forward. What kind of empire? For the next 20 minutes, Ben explained the political situation of the galaxy in terms Goku could understand. The Galactic Empire, ruled by a tyrannical emperor and enforced by beings called Sith, who wielded the dark side of the Force. The Rebel Alliance fighting a desperate guerrilla war against impossible odds. The Jedi Order, once peacekeepers of the galaxy, now hunted to extinction. Darth Vader, the Emperor's apprentice and enforcer, a being of terrible power who had personally killed many of the remaining Jedi. Goku listened with growing concern. It reminded him of when Frieza had controlled vast swathes of the universe in his own reality, a tyrant whose power let him crush anyone who opposed him. This Vader, Goku said slowly. He's strong? Very, Ben confirmed. Perhaps the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy. He wields the Force with mastery few can match, enhanced by cybernetic augmentation. He's killed Jedi Masters in single combat, destroyed entire rebel cells personally, and serves the Emperor with absolute loyalty. Goku felt something stir in his chest, not fear, but anticipation. The same feeling he got when he heard about a strong opponent. He forced it down. This wasn't a tournament. This was real oppression, real suffering. So, if I help people like I did with those thugs earlier, this empire might come after me. Almost certainly. Ben's eyes were grave. Which is why I needed to speak with you. You have a choice to make, Goku. You can try to stay hidden, keep your head down, and perhaps avoid Imperial attention while you search for a way home. Or I can fight, Goku finished. Help people. Do what's right. It's not that simple, Ben cautioned. This isn't a matter of good versus evil in the straightforward sense. The Empire brings order, infrastructure, protection from pirates and raiders. Yes, they're tyrannical, but many planets prosper under their rule. The rebels fight for freedom, but their methods sometimes involve innocent casualties. And there are countless other factions, criminal organizations, independent systems, corporate interests, all with their own agendas. Goku absorbed this, his usual simple worldview challenged by the complexity Ben described. Back home, when enemies showed up, you fought them. You protected Earth. It was clear-cut. But here, what do you think I should do? He asked. Ben was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said carefully, that your arrival may not be an accident. The Force works in mysterious ways, and perhaps you were brought here for a reason. But the choice must be yours. I can offer you shelter, guidance, help you understand this galaxy. But I cannot tell you what path to walk. Before Goku could respond, the cantina doors burst open with a crash that silenced every conversation. 4 figures strode in, humanoids in matching armor, all carrying weapons that looked far more sophisticated than the blasters the thugs had wielded. The armor was white, polished, marked with orange shoulder pauldrons that seemed to indicate rank. Their helmets completely concealed their faces, giving them an intimidating uniform appearance. Stormtroopers, Ben muttered, his hand moving subtly toward something beneath his robes. Imperial soldiers. This is unusual. They rarely patrol Mos Eisley directly. The lead stormtrooper scanned the cantina, and even through the helmet, Goku felt the weight of that gaze. When it landed on their booth, the trooper's posture shifted. Recognition or perhaps confirmation. You there, the trooper's voice came out mechanically filtered through the helmet speakers. Orange clothing, dark hair. Imperial intelligence received reports of an unidentified humanoid displaying unusual abilities in the market district. That matches your description. Goku stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. Ben remained seated but tense, ready to move. I didn't do anything wrong, Goku said calmly. I just stopped some guys from beating up a kid. Witnesses report you moved with inhuman speed and displayed strength inconsistent with your body mass, the trooper continued, ignoring Goku's explanation. The Empire requires all Force sensitives to register with Imperial authorities for evaluation. You will come with us for questioning. And if I don't want to, 4 weapons snapped up, pointed directly at Goku's chest. The cantina had gone absolutely silent, patrons slowly moving away from the potential firefight. Then you will be detained by force, the lead trooper stated. We are authorized to use lethal measures if you resist. Goku glanced at Ben, who gave the slightest shake of his head, a warning not to escalate. But Goku had never been good at letting himself be pushed around, especially by people who acted like bullies with official uniforms. I really don't want any trouble, Goku said, raising his hand slowly, but I'm not going anywhere with you. I didn't do anything wrong, and where I come from, that means you don't get to arrest me. Final warning, the trooper said. Come peacefully or... Goku moved. Not at full speed, that would have been overkill, but fast enough that the trooper's eyes couldn't track him. One moment he was standing at the booth, hands raised. The next, he was behind all 4 of them, and their weapons were in his hands, neatly stacked like firewood. He set the blasters down gently on the bar and turned back to the stormtroopers, who were still processing what had happened. Like I said, I don't want trouble. Maybe you should just leave. The lead trooper's hand went to a device on his belt, a communicator, Goku realized. Code 7, requesting immediate backup. Suspect is extremely hostile and displaying force abilities beyond... Goku gently plucked the communicator from the trooper's belt before he could finish. Moving so fast it seemed like the device had simply disappeared. Sorry, but I really don't think we need more people with guns showing up. Then Ben was beside him, moving with surprising speed for an old man. That's enough, he said quietly, but with absolute authority. He waved his hand in a gesture that seemed meaningless. Yet Goku felt the force, or whatever Ben called it, ripple outward like invisible fingers. You don't need to see his identification. He's not the one you're looking for. You can go about your business. The lead trooper's posture shifted, tension draining away. We don't need to see his identification. He's not the one we're looking for. We can go about our business. The voice was flat, almost dreamy. Move along, Ben added with another hand wave. Move along, the trooper echoed. He turned to his squad. False alarm. Target must have left the area, returned to patrol. The 4 stormtroopers filed out of the cantina as if nothing had happened, leaving behind only their confiscated weapons and a cantina full of stunned patrons. The moment the door closed, chaos erupted. Voices raised in a dozen languages, everyone talking at once about what they'd just witnessed. Ben grabbed Goku's arm with surprising strength. We need to leave, now. That force suggestion won't last long, and when they report back to their superiors, this entire sector will be swarming with troops. He headed for a side exit, and Goku followed, scooping up his power pole from where he'd left it at the booth. They emerged into an alley as the twin suns finally began to set, casting long shadows across the sandy streets. Ben moved quickly despite his age, leading Goku through a maze of back streets with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of the settlement. That was amazing, Goku said as they walked. That thing you did with your hand, making them forget. The Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded, Ben explained without slowing. But it won't work on everyone, and it leaves traces that Force sensitives can detect. If there's a true Inquisitor, or, Force forbid, Vader himself anywhere near Tatooine, they'll sense what just happened. Good, Goku said, then caught himself at Ben's sharp look. I mean, not good that we're in trouble. But if this Vader is as strong as you say, maybe I should meet him. Try to reason with him or fight him. Ben stopped walking and turned to face Goku fully. You have the heart of a warrior. I can see that. But Vader isn't like opponents you've faced before. He was once a Jedi, one of the most powerful who ever lived. Now he's consumed by the dark side, twisted into something barely human. He won't listen to reason, and he won't stop until you're dead or turn to his service. Goku met the old man's eyes steadily. Then I guess we'd better make sure that doesn't happen. Ben held his gaze for a long moment, then smiled, a sad smile that held centuries of regret. You remind me of someone I once knew. He had your same confidence, your same pure heart. I hope your story ends better than his. They emerged from the alley onto a wider street where strange vehicles, land speeders Ben called them, zipped past. In the distance, Goku could hear sirens and see lights flashing. The Empire was responding and they were running out of time. "I have a place we can go," Ben said. "Safe, hidden. We can plan there. Figure out your next move. But Goku," he paused. "What happened tonight changed everything. The Empire knows you exist now. Vader will know you exist. And one way or another, he'll come looking." Goku looked up at the darkening sky where strange stars were beginning to emerge. Constellations he'd never seen, from a galaxy that wasn't his home. Somewhere up there, people were suffering under tyranny. Somewhere up there, a warrior named Vader enforced that tyranny through strength and fear. And Goku, who had spent his entire life seeking strong opponents and protecting the weak, felt the familiar fire kindle in his chest. "Let him come," he said quietly. "I'll be ready." The Imperial Star Destroyer Devastator hung in the void above Tatooine like a knife pointed at the planet's heart. On the bridge, officers in gray uniforms moved with efficient precision, monitoring sensor arrays and communications channels with the disciplined calm expected of those who served directly under Lord Vader. The atmosphere was one of controlled tension. Everyone knew that mistakes in the Dark Lord's presence often proved fatal. In the meditation chamber deep within the ship's superstructure, Darth Vader sat in absolute darkness. The sphere was designed to allow him to remove his helmet in privacy, connected to life support systems that kept his ruined body functional. But today he kept the mask on, his mechanical breathing the only sound in the chamber as he reached out through the Force, searching. The disturbance had been subtle at first, a ripple in the Force that had drawn his attention from halfway across the sector. Not the usual signature of a Force sensitive, but something else. Something that occupied space in the galaxy with an intensity that defied conventional understanding. It was like sensing a star suddenly ignite where only void had existed before. And then, hours later, a second disturbance. A familiar presence, Kenobi. His old master, the one who had left him to burn on Mustafar, was still hiding on this miserable dust ball. But he had revealed himself through a Force suggestion, a trivial use of power that nevertheless left traces Vader could follow like breadcrumbs. The coincidence was too great to ignore. This new presence, this anomaly, and Kenobi's sudden activity. They were connected. Vader's gloved fists clenched. For years he had known Kenobi was on Tatooine. The Force had whispered it to him countless times. But the Emperor had forbidden direct action. "The boy must be allowed to mature," Palpatine had said. "Your son will become a powerful tool, in time. Patience, Lord Vader." But if Kenobi was recruiting new Force sensitives, training potential Jedi to oppose the Empire, then surely the Emperor would permit intervention. And if this new presence was as powerful as Vader sensed, the intercom crackled. "Lord Vader, we have a report from the surface. A priority transmission from the garrison commander." Vader pressed a control, and the holoprojector in his chamber activated, displaying a shimmering blue image of a nervous Imperial officer. "Speak," Vader commanded, his voice a mechanical rumble. "My lord, we have confirmed reports of an individual displaying Force abilities in Mos Eisley. Multiple witnesses describe superhuman speed and strength. The subject disarmed 4 stormtroopers without visible effort and was last seen with an elderly human male, matching descriptions of..." The officer hesitated. "A person of interest, designated Kenobi." There it was. Confirmation. Vader rose from his meditation pod, his cape settling around his armored form like the wings of a predatory bird. "Prepare my shuttle. I will handle this personally." "My lord, should we dispatch additional troops to..." "No." Vader's tone allowed no argument. "This matter requires my direct attention. Have my shuttle ready within the hour, and transmit full sensor data on the anomaly to my personal datapad. I want every scrap of information your incompetent forces have gathered. At once, Lord Vader." The hologram flickered and died. Vader stood alone in his chamber, feeling the dark side coil around him like a familiar lover. A new force sensitive, powerful enough to register across light years. Kenobi emerging from hiding after nearly 2 decades. It was as if the force itself was arranging pieces on a board, setting up a confrontation that had been delayed too long. Good. Vader welcomed it. The monotony of hunting scattered rebel cells and crushing pathetic uprisings had grown tedious. He craved challenge, true challenge. And perhaps, if this new force sensitive was as powerful as he sensed, Vader would finally have an opponent worthy of his skills. Or, if they proved tractable, a new apprentice. Someone to help him overthrow Palpatine and claim the Empire for himself. The rule of 2 demanded it after all. Master and apprentice always. And Vader had grown tired of being the apprentice. He strode from his meditation chamber, his breathing echoing through the corridors as crew members scrambled to clear his path. Within the hour, he would descend to Tatooine, and by the twin sun's next rising, he would have answers, or corpses. Ben's dwelling was exactly what Goku would have expected from a hermit. Simple, functional, carved partially into the rock face of a canyon wall in the Junland wastes. The main chamber was sparsely furnished with a sleeping pallet, a small food preparation area, and what looked like a workbench covered in mechanical parts. But what caught Goku's attention was the trunk in the corner, sealed with locks that hummed with that strange force energy. "Make yourself comfortable," Ben said, moving to the food prep area. "You must be hungry. I have some rations, nothing fancy, but—" "I'm starving," Goku interrupted, his stomach growling as if on cue. He'd expended a lot of energy with the instant transmission mishap and hadn't eaten since arriving in this universe. Ben chuckled and began pulling out packages. As he worked, Goku explored the dwelling, respectful but curious. His eyes kept drifting back to that locked trunk. There was something inside it, something that resonated with the same energy Ben wielded. Not key, but similar enough that Goku's senses registered it as significant. "You're curious about the chest," Ben observed without turning around. "Sorry," Goku said, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to be nosy. I can feel something in there. Something powerful." Ben paused in his food preparation, then moved to the trunk. He deactivated the locks with a series of precise touches, and the lid opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside, nestled in protective padding, was a cylindrical object about 30 centimeters long. Ben lifted it carefully, reverently. "This," he said, holding it up to the light filtering through the cave entrance, "is a lightsaber. The weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age." The cylinder was surprisingly simple, metallic with control studs and switches along its length. But Goku could feel the potential within it, like compressed power waiting to be released. "Can I see it work?" Ben smiled slightly, then activated the weapon. A blade of brilliant blue energy extended from the hilt, with a distinctive snap hiss, humming with a sound that seemed to vibrate in Goku's chest. The blade was pure energy, contained and shaped into a coherent form about a meter long. It cast dancing blue light across the cave walls. "Amazing," Goku breathed. "That's pure energy. How does it hold its shape like that?" "The kyber crystal at its heart," Ben explained, deactivating the blade. "It focuses the energy through the force, creating a stable plasma blade capable of cutting through nearly anything. Each Jedi builds their own lightsaber as part of their training. It's as much a part of them as their own hand." He set the weapon back in the trunk, but instead of closing it, he pulled out a second lightsaber. This one was different, more angular, with a distinctive cylindrical activation switch. "This one belonged to your father," Ben said, and for a moment Goku thought he was talking to him before realizing Ben's gaze had drifted, lost in memory. He was the best star pilot in the galaxy and a cunning warrior, and he was a good friend. "What happened to him?" Goku asked gently. Ben's expression darkened. "He was betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader. Vader was once my apprentice, before he turned to evil and helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights." The old man's voice carried decades of pain and guilt. He was seduced by the dark side of the Force. Goku sat down, processing this. The dark side? That's like evil key? Using your power to hurt people instead of protect them? In essence, yes. Ben moved to sit across from Goku, handing him a package of rations. The Force has two aspects. The light side comes from peace, serenity, harmony. It's about protecting life and serving others. The dark side is fed by anger, fear, aggression. It offers quick power, but it corrupts everything it touches. And once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Goku opened the ration package and began eating. It tasted bland but edible, while considering Ben's words. Back home, I've fought people who use their power for evil. Really evil people. But I always believed they could change if they wanted to. If someone showed them another way. A noble sentiment, Ben said sadly. And in some cases, you might be right. But Vader chose his path fully and completely. He's killed thousands, destroyed worlds, corrupted everything the Jedi stood for. I've felt his presence in the Force. There's nothing left of the man he once was. Maybe, Goku said, not argumentatively, but thoughtfully. But I've been surprised before. Piccolo tried to kill me and take over the world. Now he's one of my best friends and helps protect Earth. Vegeta was a murderer who wanted to destroy my planet. Now he's still kind of a jerk, but he fights for the right reasons. He met Ben's eyes. People can change, Ben. Even the worst people, if someone gives them a reason to. Ben studied him for a long moment. Your universe must be very different from ours. Maybe. Goku finished the ration package and opened another. His Saiyan appetite was legendary. But people are people, right? Even across different universes. Everyone has something they care about, something worth protecting. You just have to find it. Before Ben could respond, he suddenly went rigid, his eyes unfocusing. Goku felt it too, a disturbance in that energy field that permeated everything. Something powerful was approaching, something dark and cold that made the temperature in the cave seem to drop. He's here, Ben whispered. Vader, he's on Tatooine, he's coming. Goku stood, his body automatically shifting into a ready stance. How long do we have? Hours, perhaps less? Ben moved to the cave entrance, staring out at the desert as if he could see across the kilometers to wherever Vader was. He'll search Mos Eisley first, interrogate anyone who saw us. Then he'll expand his search. He turned back to Goku. You should run. Take one of my land speeders. Head to the spaceport, find a ship off-world. I'll stay here. Lead him away from... No, Goku said firmly. I don't run from fights, especially not from bullies. And from what you've told me, this Vader guy is the biggest bully in the galaxy. This isn't a game, Goku. Ben's voice rose with uncharacteristic emotion. Vader will kill you. He's more machine than man now, enhanced by cybernetics, wielding the dark side with mastery you can't imagine. He's defeated Jedi Masters, warriors who spent their entire lives training in the Force. Goku's expression was serious, but not afraid. Then I guess I'll have to be better than they were. He cracked his knuckles, feeling his ki responding to his rising excitement. Besides, didn't you say my arrival might not be an accident? Maybe I'm here to face this Vader. Maybe that's the whole point. Ben opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He studied Goku's face, the determination, the confidence that came from a lifetime of facing impossible odds and prevailing. You truly believe you can defeat him, don't you? I don't know, Goku admitted honestly, but I know I'll give him everything I've got, and if he's as strong as you say, well, a smile crossed his face, the same smile he always wore before a challenging fight. Then maybe this will be interesting. The old Jedi shook his head in disbelief, but there was something in his eyes, a spark of hope that had been extinguished long ago, suddenly reigniting. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish. Possibly both. I get that a lot, Goku said cheerfully. Then his expression grew more serious. But Ben, I need you to promise me something. If this goes bad, If Vader is too strong or if something happens to me, don't blame yourself. Don't carry that guilt. I'm choosing this fight. Nobody's forcing me. Ben's weathered hand touched the lightsaber at his belt. If you face Vader, you won't face him alone. I may be old, but I'm not completely useless. The Force is still with me. I appreciate that, Goku said, bowing slightly in respect. But I think I need to face him one-on-one first. Get a sense of how strong he really is. If things go wrong, he grinned. Well, then you can jump in and save me. A proximity alarm, a simple arrangement of sensors Ben had set up, chimed softly. Both men turned toward the sound. On a small monitor, Goku could see a shuttle descending through Tatooine's atmosphere, black and angular like a predatory bird. It was heading toward Mos Eisley, but its trajectory would bring it close enough to the wastes that anyone aboard could sense their presence if they were looking. He's here, Ben said unnecessarily. Goku watched the shuttle descend, feeling his heart rate increase. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Ever since arriving in this universe, he'd felt slightly off balance, confused, and lost. But this, facing a powerful opponent, testing his skills against someone who challenged him, this was familiar territory. How do I find him? Goku asked. You won't need to, Ben replied grimly. Once he starts searching through the Force, he'll sense you, just as you sense him. The question isn't how to find him, Goku. The question is whether you'll survive the encounter. Goku stepped to the cave entrance, looking out across the desert toward where he could just barely see the black shuttle touching down in the distance. Somewhere in that ship was Darth Vader, enforcer of tyranny, killer of Jedi, wielder of the dark side, one of the most dangerous beings in this galaxy. Only one way to find out, Goku said, and he lifted off the ground, ki flaring around him as he shot toward Mos Eisley like a golden comet across the desert sky. Behind him, Ben Kenobi watched him go. One hand on his lightsaber, the other pressed against his chest, where his heart hammered with emotions he hadn't felt in decades. Fear, certainly, but also something he'd thought lost forever. Hope. The streets of Mos Eisley had transformed from their usual chaotic bustle into something resembling a ghost town. Word had spread quickly. Darth Vader himself had arrived. And when the Empire's enforcer came calling, wise beings made themselves scarce. Stormtroopers had established checkpoints at every major intersection, and TIE fighters screamed overhead in search patterns that sent locals scrambling for cover. Vader strode through the main thoroughfare, his cape billowing behind him despite the still air, his breathing apparatus creating a rhythmic soundtrack of mechanical inhalations that echoed off the sand-worn buildings. Citizens who couldn't hide quickly enough pressed themselves against walls, heads bowed, praying to whatever gods they worshipped, that the Dark Lord's attention would pass over them. He needed none of their cowering fear. His focus was singular, absolute. Through the Force, he could feel the presence he'd sensed from orbit, closer now, approaching rather than fleeing. How unusual. Most Force sensitives ran when they felt his coming, scattering like prey animals before a predator. This one was different. This one was coming to meet him. Foolish, but intriguing. Vader stopped in the center of the street, turning slowly, letting his senses expand through the Force. There, above, approaching fast. Not a ship, no engine signature. Something flying through raw power alone. Moving at speeds that would have impressed even Vader's enhanced reflexes. The stormtroopers around him raised their weapons, tracking the incoming object. Hold your fire, Vader commanded. This one is mine. Goku descended from the sky like a falling star, ki trailing behind him in golden streamers that dissipated in the dry air. He touched down 30 meters from Vader, his boots settling gently on the sand, despite the speed of his approach. For a moment, neither moved, each taking the measure of the other. Vader saw a young man in strange orange clothing, dark hair wild from flight, body radiating power that didn't register as the Force, but somehow occupied the same conceptual space. Human in appearance, but the intensity of presence suggested something more. And those eyes, dark, alert, measuring Vader not with fear, but with the focused attention of a fellow warrior. Goku saw a figure encased entirely in black armor, a cape that seemed to drink in light, and a mask that revealed nothing of the man beneath. But he didn't need to see a face to sense what he was dealing with. The energy around Vader was immense, dark and cold, like the depths of space, but controlled with frightening discipline. This was power refined through decades of use, shaped into a weapon as precise as it was devastating. "You're Darth Vader," Goku said, not a question. "I am." Vader's voice was deep, mechanically modulated, but carrying an authority that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "And you are the anomaly that appeared in the Dune Sea, the one who disarmed my troops and consorts with the traitor Kenobi." "I wouldn't call it consorting," Goku replied, keeping his tone friendly despite the tension crackling between them. "He's just been helping me understand where I am. I'm kind of new here." "So I have surmised." Vader took a step forward, his presence in the Force intensifying as he studied Goku. "You are not from this galaxy. You do not touch the Force, yet you burn with a power I have never encountered. What are you?" "Just a guy who likes to fight strong opponents," Goku said honestly. "And from what I hear, you're pretty strong. Maybe the strongest person on this planet." A moment of silence stretched between them. Then, impossibly, Vader laughed. A brief, harsh sound filtered through his respirator that somehow conveyed both amusement and menace. "You challenge me? You who understand nothing of this galaxy, or the power I wield? Your confidence borders on insanity." "I get that a lot," Goku said with a slight smile. "But I'm not here to challenge you exactly. I just wanted to meet you. See if maybe we could talk instead of fight." "Talk." Vader's hand moved to the cylindrical object at his belt. "What would we possibly have to discuss?" Goku took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Ben told me about the Empire, about how it controls people through fear, about how you hunt down anyone with Force powers and either kill them or make them serve. That doesn't seem right to me. People should be free to choose their own path." "Freedom is chaos," Vader replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "The galaxy requires order, structure, strength. The Empire provides this. Those with power must be controlled, directed toward the greater good, or they become threats that must be eliminated." He tilted his head slightly. "Which category do you fall into, anomaly? Are you controllable? Or must you be eliminated?" Goku's expression hardened, his easygoing demeanor shifting into something more serious. "I'm neither. I don't take orders from people who rule through fear, and I'm not so easy to eliminate. But I don't want to fight you, Vader. Not unless you give me no choice. Then you will die making the wrong choice." Vader's lightsaber sprang to life with a snap hiss, the blade burning crimson like concentrated hatred. "I sense Kenobi taught you something in your brief time together. He always did have a weakness for collecting strays. But whatever he told you about redemption or the light side's superiority was lies. There is only power, and those too weak to seek it." The red blade hummed menacingly as Vader shifted into a combat stance. Form V, Gen. So, a style that emphasized power and aggression. "You will submit to Imperial authority, or you will die. Choose." Goku sighed, dropping into his own fighting stance, knees bent, weight centered, hands raised. He didn't power up, not yet. Maybe Vader would see reason. Maybe this could still be resolved without violence. "I choose option 3, he said. "I protect myself and don't let you hurt anyone else. That work for you?" Vader's response was to extend his free hand toward Goku, and suddenly the Force, that strange energy field Goku could sense but not touch, compressed around him like an invisible fist. Vader was attempting to choke him, to crush his windpipe using telekinesis that would have killed any normal human in seconds. Goku felt the pressure around his throat, felt the Force trying to collapse his airways. It was impressive. Genuinely impressive. Like having invisible hands squeezing with the strength of a hydraulic press. But Goku had trained under 100 times Earth's gravity. He'd withstood attacks from beings who could destroy planets. His body, hardened by decades of combat and Saiyan physiology, simply resisted. He reached up and, to Vader's visible shock, spread his hands as if pushing aside curtains. The Force choke dissipated, scattered by raw physical resistance that shouldn't have been possible. "That was a neat trick," Goku said, his voice slightly strained but functional. "But I've dealt with telekinesis before. You're going to need more than that." For the first time in years, Darth Vader felt something he'd almost forgotten: surprise, followed immediately by intrigue. This being had just shrugged off a Force technique that had killed Jedi Masters, not through Force resistance, but through pure physical resilience that defied conventional understanding. Good. Vader had hoped for a challenge. He launched forward with speed, enhanced by Force augmentation, his lightsaber cutting a crimson arc toward Goku's center mass. The strike was fast enough to bisect most opponents before they could register the attack had begun. Goku moved his head slightly and the blade passed millimeters from his face, close enough that he felt the heat but not the bite. Vader immediately flowed into a second strike, then a third, his blade work a masterpiece of precision and power. Each strike was aimed at vital points: throat, heart, head, delivered with the confidence of someone who had killed hundreds with these same techniques. And Goku dodged them all. Not with Force precognition, but with pure combat instinct, honed over a lifetime of fighting. His movements were minimal, efficient, the mark of a true martial artist who understood that the best defense wasted no motion. Vader increased his tempo, his strikes becoming a crimson blur as he drew deeper on the dark side. The Force flooded through him, enhancing his speed, his strength, his reflexes beyond even his cybernetic enhancements. His fighting style was perfection itself, decades of practice refined into a killing art that few in the galaxy could match. And still, Goku danced between the strikes, his expression focused but not afraid. He was reading the pattern, learning Vader's style with every exchange. His eyes tracked the lightsaber's movement, not with Force precognition, but with pure observational skill. "You're really good," Goku commented, ducking under a horizontal slash that would have decapitated him. "Best lightsaber technique I've seen. Of course, you're the only person I've seen use one, but still." Vader thrust forward with the Force, attempting to blast Goku backward into a building. The kinetic wave that could have crumpled Durasteel hit Goku like a truck, and he skidded backward several meters, boots carving furrows in the sand. But he remained standing, and when the dust cleared, he was smiling. "Okay," Goku said, and his aura suddenly flared golden around him, not quite transforming into Super Saiyan, but channeling his ki in a visible display that lit up the street like a second sun. "My turn." He moved, and Vader barely tracked it. One moment, Goku was 30 meters away. The next, his fist was driving toward Vader's midsection with enough force to crater pavement. Vader brought his lightsaber down to block, but Goku's other hand was already there, catching the blade, with his bare hand. The plasma weapon, which could cut through blast doors and melt through armor, pressed against Goku's palm and didn't cut. His ki-enhanced skin resisted the weapon, dispersing the energy across a surface area too great to penetrate. It hurt. Goku could feel the burning sensation, but it didn't maim. Vader's shock lasted a microsecond. Then Goku's kick caught him in the chest, and the Dark Lord of the Sith flew backward, crashing through a cantina wall in an explosion of stone and dust. Stormtroopers opened fire immediately, dozens of blaster bolts converging on Goku from every direction. He spun, his hands moving in patterns almost too fast to see, and the bolts deflected away, not absorbed, not blocked by a lightsaber, but literally swatted aside by hands, moving with impossible precision. "I said I didn't want to fight," Goku called out to the troopers. "Can you guys just not?" Vader emerged from the rubble, his armor scraped but intact, his breathing mechanism undamaged. Telekinetically, he lifted chunks of the destroyed building, stones weighing hundreds of kilograms each, and hurled them at Goku like missiles. Goku dodged the first few, then simply punched through one, shattering it into gravel. "Vader, listen to me. We don't have to do this. I'm not your enemy." "You are an obstacle," Vader replied, his mechanical voice cold with calculation. "And I remove obstacles." He raised both hands, and Goku felt the full weight of the Force descending on him. Not just a choke, but an attempt to completely immobilize him, to lock every muscle and crush every bone through telekinetic force that had destroyed starship hulls. Goku's aura exploded outward, golden ki flaring so bright that stormtroopers had to shield their eyes. The Force assault broke against that energy field like waves against a cliff. He wasn't using the Force to resist. He was using something else, something that existed in parallel to it. "You want to see what I can really do?" Goku's voice had taken on an edge of frustration. He'd tried talking, he'd tried defending, but Vader wasn't listening, wasn't backing down. Fine. Maybe a demonstration of real power would make him understand. Goku's hair began to flicker, black shifting toward gold. His muscles tensed, veins standing out as he gathered his ki. The ground beneath his feet cracked, then fractured, spiderweb patterns spreading outward as raw power built around him. "This is your last chance," Goku said, his voice tight with the strain of holding back transformation. "Stand down and we can talk, or I show you just how outmatched you really are." Vader stared at the being before him, analyzing with the cold calculation that had kept him alive through countless battles. This anomaly was powerful, far more powerful than Vader had initially estimated. The energy radiating from him was immense, possibly greater than any Force-sensitive Vader had encountered. But power alone didn't win battles. Technique, experience, ruthlessness. These were what separated masters from pretenders. And Vader was a master. "Show me," Vader commanded, his lightsaber raised, the dark side coiling around him like living shadow. "Show me your power, anomaly. And then I will show you why I am the Dark Lord of the Sith." The street erupted into chaos as two warriors, one born of this galaxy's ancient mystical tradition, the other from a universe where martial prowess transcended physical law, finally stopped holding back. The transformation began with a scream that shattered windows across 3 city blocks. Goku's ki erupted outward in a column of golden light that pierced the sky, visible from orbit. His hair lifted, flickering between black and gold, between mortal and legend. The ground beneath him didn't just crack. It shattered, creating a crater that spread outward in concentric rings of pulverized stone and fused sand. Stormtroopers were blown off their feet by the sheer pressure of his power, sent tumbling through the streets like leaves in a hurricane. And then, in an instant of perfect clarity, the transformation completed. Goku's hair blazed pure gold, standing on end as if gravity had ceased to affect it. His eyes shifted from black to teal, burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce through reality itself. His aura became visible even to non-Force sensitives, a crackling corona of golden energy that sparked with miniature lightning bolts. The very air around him vibrated with power. This was Super Saiyan, the legendary transformation of his people, achieved through need and fury, marking the difference between a powerful warrior and something that transcended mortal limitations entirely. Vader felt it through the Force, not as a Force presence, but as a distortion in reality itself. It was like standing before a collapsing star, feeling gravity bend and twist around impossible mass. His danger sense, honed through decades of surviving assassination attempts and battlefield chaos, screamed warnings that this opponent had just crossed from dangerous into potentially lethal. Good. Vader lived for such moments. "Impressive," Vader acknowledged, his mechanical breathing the only sound in the suddenly silent street. "You possess power worthy of respect. But power without control is meaningless. Allow me to demonstrate." He thrust both hands forward, and the Force obeyed his will with devastating precision. Every loose object within 50 meters, rubble, weapons, even disabled land speeders, lifted into the air and accelerated toward Goku like a storm of shrapnel moving at hypersonic speeds. Goku's response was simple and brutal. He raised one hand and released a focused burst of Ki. Ki! The shockwave that erupted from his palm was pure concussive force, invisible but devastating. It met Vader's telekinetic barrage head-on, and the collision created a sphere of destruction between them. Metal twisted, stone exploded into dust, and the air itself ignited from the friction of incompatible energies meeting. Then Goku moved, and Vader lost track of him, not through invisibility or stealth, but through pure speed that exceeded even Vader's force-enhanced perceptions. One moment, Goku was at the center of the explosion. The next, his elbow was driving toward Vader's helmet, with enough force to decapitate a rancor. Vader's lightsaber came up on pure instinct, blade intercepting the strike. The impact drove him backward, boots carving trenches through the street as he absorbed the momentum. His cybernetic joints screamed warnings about stress loads exceeding safety parameters. Impossible. No physical strike should generate this much force. Goku pressed the advantage, his fists and feet becoming a blur. He wasn't just fast. He was faster than Vader had ever encountered, faster than recordings of Master Yoda at his peak, possibly faster than the eye could process. Each strike carried enough power to shatter armor, and Vader's lightsaber worked overtime deflecting blows that would have been instantly lethal. But Vader was not merely a warrior, he was a Sith Lord, and the dark side offered advantages beyond physical prowess. Between one of Goku's strikes and the next, Vader released a wave of force lightning. Crackling blue-white energy arced from his fingertips, not aimed at Goku directly, but at the ground beneath him, superheating sand into glass and creating an explosion that forced even the Super Saiyan to leap backward. The moment of separation was all Vader needed. He reached out through the Force, found the collapsed cantina behind Goku, and ripped the entire structure from its foundation. Tons of stone and metal lifted into the air and hurled toward Goku's back. Goku spun and fired a quick ki blast, Kamehameha, that vaporized the building mid-flight, turning it into a cloud of superheated debris. But Vader was already moving, closing the distance, while Goku's attention was divided. Lightsaber thrust forward in a killing strike aimed at the heart. The blade struck true, penetrated Goku's GI, touched his chest, and stopped. The plasma weapon pressed against skin that glowed with golden energy, and while Goku grimaced in pain, the blade didn't penetrate. His Kai-hardened body resisted even the lightsaber's cutting power, though Vader could see the effort it cost him. "You're gonna have to try harder than that," Goku grunted, grabbing Vader's wrist and twisting. The Dark Lord felt his cybernetic arms' servos strain, felt joints designed to crush durasteel beginning to buckle under Goku's grip. He released the lightsaber before permanent damage occurred, letting it deactivate and drop, then drove his knee toward Goku's midsection with cybernetically enhanced force. The strike connected, and Goku exhaled sharply, but his grip didn't falter. Instead, he twisted further and threw Vader, actually threw the armored Sith Lord like a wrestling opponent, sending him crashing through another building. Vader rose from the rubble, his armor cracked in several places, warning lights flashing across his chest panel. Structural damage to his life support. Not critical yet, but concerning. He called his lightsaber back to his hand through the Force, the weapon flying across the distance to slap into his palm. Above them, TIE fighters screamed past, their pilots having received orders to provide support. They opened fire, green laser bolts converging on Goku's position. Goku looked up at the incoming fire, and his expression was almost disappointed. "Really? Now you're bringing in backup?" He raised both hands above his head, gathering ki between them. A sphere of golden energy formed, growing larger with each passing second. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it." He hurled the energy sphere upward. It didn't explode. Instead, it multiplied, splitting into dozens of smaller spheres that tracked the TIE fighters like guided missiles. Each sphere struck with precision, not destroying the fighters entirely, but disabling their weapons and engines, sending them into controlled crashes in the desert outside the city limits. "I'm not trying to kill anyone," Goku shouted, his frustration evident. "Why won't you people just stop attacking me?" "Because you are the threat," Vader replied, launching himself forward with force-enhanced speed. His fighting style shifted, flowing from the aggressive Gen-So into the more defensive Soresu, using the Force to predict Goku's movements and position his blade where the attacks would land, rather than trying to track them visually. It worked, partially. Vader managed to score several glancing hits, his lightsaber leaving burns across Goku's arms and shoulders. Nothing deep, nothing crippling, but proof that the Sith Lord was adapting to his opponent's speed. Goku, for his part, pulled his punches. Vader could sense it in the way the Saiyan hesitated before each potentially lethal strike, the way he redirected blows that would have shattered Vader's helmet into hits that merely sent him stumbling. This anomaly was still trying not to kill him, even in the midst of a life-or-death battle. It was, Vader thought, the stupidest tactical decision he'd ever witnessed, and perhaps the most intriguing. "You hold back," Vader observed between exchanges, his breathing apparatus working harder to supply oxygen to his damaged body. "Why?" "Because I don't want to kill you." Goku blocked a lightsaber strike with his forearm, the blade sizzling against his key-hardened skin, and delivered a palm strike to Vader's chest that sent the Sith Lord skidding backward. "I told you, I'm not your enemy. The Empire is wrong, and what you're doing is wrong, but that doesn't mean you have to die." "Compassion is weakness," Vader stated, driving his fist forward in a force-enhanced punch that Goku caught effortlessly. "The Jedi taught such lies. It is why they fell." "The Jedi were wrong too," Goku replied, and Vader felt genuine surprise at the statement. "Ben told me about them, about their rules against attachments, about how they suppressed emotion. That's not right either. Emotions aren't bad. Fear, anger, even hate. They're part of being alive. But you don't have to let them control you. You can acknowledge them and still choose to do the right thing." Their fists were locked together now, neither able to overpower the other. Vader's dark side-enhanced strength meeting Goku's Super Saiyan power, in a stalemate that cracked the ground beneath them. "You speak of choice as if it matters," Vader said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been bitter amusement. "I made my choice long ago. I chose power over weakness, the dark side over the light, the Empire over the failed Republic. These choices made me what I am." "And what are you?" Goku asked, genuinely curious despite their struggle. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's trapped. This armor, these machines keeping you alive, they're not strength. They're a prison." For a microsecond, Vader's concentration wavered. How did this stranger, this anomaly from another universe, see through to a truth Vader had buried beneath decades of dark side philosophy and carefully constructed justifications? Goku felt the waver and, instead of pressing his advantage, released Vader's fist and stepped back, powering down slightly. Not dropping the Super Saiyan transformation entirely, but reducing the aura's intensity as a gesture of peace. "I can sense it," Goku continued quietly. "That dark energy around you. It's not just power. It's pain. You're hurting, and you've been hurting for a long time. Someone did something terrible to you, and you've never recovered. You've just buried it under anger and hatred." Vader stood frozen, his lightsaber still ignited but lowered. No one had spoken to him this way in nearly 20 years. Not since Padme had died in his arms, since he'd lost everything that mattered and embraced the dark side as the only thing left worth holding on to. "You know nothing of my pain," Vader said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're right," Goku acknowledged. "I don't. But I know that whatever happened to you, becoming what you are now isn't the answer. Hurting other people because you're hurting, that just spreads the pain around. It doesn't fix anything." "Your naivety is astounding." Vader raised his lightsaber again, but there was less conviction in the gesture. The galaxy does not operate on friendship and good intentions. It operates on power and the will to use it. The strong survive, the weak perish. That is the natural order. "That's not natural," Goku countered. "That's just sad." He dropped his fighting stance entirely, arms at his sides, leaving himself completely open. "I've fought my entire life, Vader. I've faced people who wanted to destroy my planet, kill everyone I love, end all life in my universe. And yeah, sometimes I had to fight them. Sometimes they didn't give me a choice. But the strongest opponents I ever faced, the ones who really challenged me, they all had one thing in common." "What?" Vader asked despite himself. "They had something they believed in, something worth fighting for, that wasn't just power for its own sake." Goku's expression was earnest, almost pleading. What do you believe in, Vader? What are you really fighting for? Because from what I've seen, all you're doing is making people afraid. And fear isn't strength. It's just emptiness. Vader stood silent, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The dark side screamed at him to strike, to kill this naive fool who dared to question the path Vader had walked for decades. But beneath the anger, beneath the dark side's constant whisper, something else stirred, something he'd thought dead and buried on Mustafar. Doubt. Before he could formulate a response, his communicator crackled. Lord Vader, the Emperor is requesting immediate contact. He has sensed a disturbance. Palpatine. His master, who had shaped Vader from the broken remains of Anakin Skywalker, who had given him purpose when everything else had been taken away. Vader knew what the Emperor would say. Kill the anomaly, or capture him for study. Eliminate the threat. Maintain order. The same orders he'd followed for 2 decades, without question. Vader looked at Goku, standing defenseless and open, still believing that words and compassion could somehow change what Vader had become. The fool actually thought he could be saved. This is not over, Vader said finally, but the Emperor has summoned me. Consider yourself fortunate that your execution has been delayed. He turned to leave, his cape swirling dramatically, but paused. Without turning back, he spoke quietly enough that only Goku's enhanced hearing would catch it. You fought well, Anomaly. You are the first opponent in years to challenge me so thoroughly. That is worthy of acknowledgement. Then Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith and Terror of the Galaxy, walked away from a fight he hadn't decisively won. Behind him, Goku powered down from Super Saiyan, his hair fading back to black, his exhaustion suddenly evident. He'd held back as much as he could, but the transformation always took its toll. As Vader's shuttle lifted off into the sky, heading back to the Devastator, Goku stood alone in the ruined street, surrounded by unconscious stormtroopers and destroyed buildings. He'd come here to talk, and instead, he'd fought. He'd tried to reach Vader, and he wasn't sure if anything had gotten through, but he'd seen something in that final moment. A hesitation, a crack in the armor that wasn't physical but psychological. Ben Kenobi emerged from the shadows where he'd been watching, his face troubled. You let him leave. You could have killed him, I felt your power. Why didn't you finish it? Goku turned to the old Jedi, his expression serious. Because he's not past saving. Nobody is. And I think deep down he knows that. He's just forgotten how to believe it. Ben stared at Goku for a long moment, then shook his head in wonder. You truly are unlike anyone I've ever met. That battle should have been your death. Instead, it may have been the first crack in Vader's armor in 20 years. I hope so, Goku said quietly, looking up at the sky where Vader's shuttle had disappeared. Because this galaxy needs more than just defeating the Empire. It needs people to remember that everyone deserves a second chance. In orbit above, Vader stood in his meditation chamber, removing his helmet with shaking hands. His face, or what remained of it, was scarred and pale, a mockery of the handsome young man he'd once been. And as he stared at his reflection in the polished black surface of the chamber, he heard an echo of words he'd thought forgotten. You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you. And for the first time in 2 decades, Darth Vader allowed himself to wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, Obi-Wan had been right to believe redemption was possible. The holographic image of Emperor Palpatine flickered to life in Vader's meditation chamber aboard the Devastator, casting the interior in eerie blue light. The Emperor's hood concealed most of his face, but his yellow eyes gleamed with an intensity that suggested he already knew far more than Vader had reported. Lord Vader, Palpatine's voice was silk wrapped around razor wire, you have encountered something unexpected on Tatooine. Yes, my master. Vader knelt, his head bowed in the gesture of submission he'd performed countless times. But inside, his thoughts churned with uncharacteristic turbulence. A being of immense power has appeared. He claims to be from another universe entirely, displaced by accident. His abilities do not stem from the Force, yet rival anything I have encountered. I felt the disturbance, Palpatine said, his tone thoughtful. A presence that burns like a sun, yet exists outside the Force's natural order. Most intriguing. And you engaged this being in combat? I did. Vader chose his words carefully. We fought to a stalemate. His power is considerable, possibly exceeding my own. But he lacks understanding of our galaxy, its politics, its power structures. He is naive. Naive? Palpatine's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. And yet he survived confrontation with you, my apprentice. That speaks to more than naivety. It speaks to genuine strength. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Lord Vader, could this being be turned? Could such power be bent to serve the Empire? Vader hesitated. That moment of hesitation told Palpatine everything. I see, the Emperor said softly, dangerously. He has affected you. This anomaly spoke to you of redemption, perhaps? Of the light side's supposed superiority? And some part of you, some weakness you thought purged, responded. No, my master, I... Do not lie to me, Lord Vader. Palpatine's voice cracked like a whip, and Vader felt the dark side itself recoil from the Emperor's displeasure. I have guided you through 2 decades of service. I know every crack in your armor, every weakness you hide beneath your mask. This being troubles you because he reminds you of what you were, weak, sentimental, bound by foolish attachments. Vader's fists clenched, but he remained kneeling. I serve you, my master, as I always have. Then prove it. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. This anomaly must be destroyed or captured. If he cannot be turned to the dark side, he must be eliminated before he becomes a rallying point for the rebellion. You will return to Tatooine with sufficient forces to overwhelm him. Do not engage him alone. Do not give him opportunity to speak his poison. Simply eradicate him, as you command, my master. The hologram flickered and died, leaving Vader alone in darkness. He sat motionless for several minutes, his breathing the only sound, his thoughts a carefully controlled chaos. The Emperor was right, of course. The anomaly, Goku, was dangerous. Not because of his power alone, but because of what he represented. Hope. The belief that strength could exist without corruption, that power could be wielded without cruelty. Ideas that threatened everything the Empire stood for. And yet, Vader remembered the way Goku had pulled his punches, deliberately avoiding lethal strikes even when victory was within reach. The way he'd offered peace, even while transforming into something that could have obliterated Vader entirely. That wasn't tactical. That wasn't strategy. That was genuine compassion from someone who had no reason to show it. When was the last time anyone had shown Vader compassion? He pushed the thought away, buried it beneath layers of dark side philosophy, and practiced detachment. Sentiment was weakness. Compassion was a lie. He was Darth Vader, and he served the Emperor. That was all that mattered. But as he rose to summon his officers and plan the assault on Mos Eisley, a small voice in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded disturbingly like Anakin Skywalker, whispered a single word: liar. In Ben Kenobi's dwelling, Goku sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in meditation. The fight with Vader had taken more out of him than he'd initially realized. Not physically, his Saiyan biology was already recovering, but mentally. He'd faced powerful opponents before, but Vader was different. The darkness around him wasn't just power. It was pain, twisted and weaponized into something that hurt to be near. You're thinking about him, Ben observed from where he stood near the entrance, monitoring the horizon for Imperial activity. Yeah, Goku admitted, opening his eyes. He's strong, Ben, really strong. But more than that, he's trapped. I could feel it. Like he's built this prison around himself out of anger and hate, and he doesn't remember how to get out. An apt description. Ben moved to sit across from Goku. Anakin Skywalker, the man Vader once was, had the potential to be the greatest Jedi who ever lived. The chosen one, prophesied to bring balance to the Force. Instead, he fell to the dark side, and help destroy everything he once swore to protect. What happened to him? Goku asked. I mean, people don't just wake up one day and decide to become evil. Something must have pushed him over the edge. Ben's expression grew pained, decades of guilt surfacing in his weathered features. Love. He loved too deeply, too possessively. He had a wife, Padme, and when he foresaw her death in visions, he became desperate to prevent it. Palpatine, who was secretly the Sith Lord, orchestrating everything, promised Anakin the power to save her through the dark side. Anakin fell for the lie, betrayed the Jedi, and in his rage and darkness, he killed Padme himself. The very thing he sought to prevent, he caused. Goku absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. So, he's been punishing himself ever since, burying the guilt under anger, because it's easier than facing what he did. In essence, yes. Ben studied Goku carefully. But Goku, you must understand. Some falls are too great for redemption. Vader has killed thousands. He's destroyed families, obliterated entire civilizations. Even if some spark of Anakin remains, the blood on his hands cannot be washed away. Maybe not, Goku said quietly, but that doesn't mean he can't stop adding to it. That doesn't mean he can't choose to do better, starting now. You sound like... Ben stopped himself, then continued. You sound like someone I once knew. Someone who believed in second chances, even when they weren't deserved. Before Goku could respond, a proximity alarm chimed. Ben's expression shifted instantly from contemplative to alert. He moved to the monitoring station and his face went pale. What is it? Goku asked, standing. Star destroyers, 3 of them entering Tatooine's orbit, and multiple troop transports heading for Mos Eisley. Ben's hands moved across the controls, pulling up sensor data. TIE fighter squadrons, AT-AT walkers, enough ground forces to occupy the entire region. Vader is returning with an army. Goku's expression hardened. He's coming to finish the fight. Not just finish it, to win it through overwhelming force. Ben turned from the console. Goku, you need to leave, now. Find a ship, get off world before they establish a complete blockade. I'll create a diversion, give you time to... No, Goku's voice was firm. I'm not running, and I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself. If Vader wants another fight, I'll give him one. But on my terms this time. Against 3 Star Destroyers and a ground army? Ben's voice rose with uncharacteristic emotion. You're powerful, but you're not invincible. The Empire will overwhelm you through sheer numbers. Then I'll have to be faster than their numbers. Goku moved to the cave entrance, looking up at the sky, where he could just make out the shapes of Star Destroyers, like daggers pointed at the planet's heart. Ben, you said my arrival might not be an accident, that maybe I was brought here for a reason. What if the reason is this? What if I'm supposed to stand up to the Empire? Show people that their tyranny can be challenged? And if you die making that stand? Ben asked quietly. Goku grinned, that familiar expression that had preceded every major battle of his life. Then I'll make sure it counts for something. But I don't plan on dying. I plan on winning. Ben stared at him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He reached into his chest and removed the lightsaber he'd been carrying. Not his own, but the one he'd shown Goku earlier, Anakin's lightsaber. Take this, Ben said, holding it out. I've carried it for Luke, waiting for the day he'd be ready to follow his father's path. But perhaps it was meant for you. A weapon from this galaxy to fight this galaxy's darkness. Goku took the lightsaber carefully, feeling the weight of it. Not physical weight, it was surprisingly light, but symbolic weight. This represented something important, something sacred to this universe's warriors. I don't know how to use one of these properly. The Force guides the hand of the Jedi, Ben said, but I think your ki might serve a similar purpose. Trust your instincts. The weapon will do the rest. Goku activated the blade, and brilliant blue energy erupted from the hilt, with that characteristic snap hiss. The blade hummed with power, and he could feel its energy, not Kai, but something that responded to his will nonetheless. He gave it a few experimental swings, and the weapon moved like it was part of him. It feels right, he said, surprised. Because you fight for the right reasons, Ben replied. That's what a Jedi's weapon truly is. Not just a tool, but an extension of their commitment to justice and protection. He placed a hand on Goku's shoulder. I cannot fight beside you, my friend. I am old and my time has passed. But I will do what I can to help. I'll contact what remains of the rebellion's intelligence network here, warn them of the Imperial buildup, and I'll watch over the boy, Luke. He'll need guidance in the days to come. Tell him about his father, Goku said seriously. Tell him the truth, all of it. He deserves to know. In time, Ben agreed, when he's ready. The sound of engines grew louder, Imperial transports making landfall in the distance. Goku deactivated the lightsaber and clipped it to his belt beside his power pole. Then he placed 2 fingers against his forehead, concentrating, searching for key signatures. He couldn't sense Vader directly. The Sith Lord didn't have ki, but he could sense the general location of life forces gathering in Mos Eisley. Thousands of them, troops assembling for an assault, and somewhere among them, that cold, dark presence that he'd fought before. They're setting up in the city, Goku said, lowering his hand, using the population as cover, or maybe as hostages. A standard Imperial tactic, Ben confirmed grimly. Control the civilians, limit your enemy's movement, force them to fight on your terms. Then I'll have to change the terms. Goku's aura began to flicker gold around the edges. Ben, I need you to do something for me. If this goes bad, if I lose, tell my family I'm sorry. Tell them I tried to do the right thing. Goku, I know you can't reach my universe. I know they'll never hear it. But say it anyway, okay? To the stars, to the Force, to whatever's listening. Because they deserve to know I didn't forget them. Ben's eyes glistened with moisture. I will. I swear it. Goku nodded once. Then his aura exploded outward, golden light banishing the shadows of the cave. He didn't transform fully, not yet, but he let his power rise to just below Super Saiyan, conserving energy for what was coming. Tell Vader something for me too, Goku said as he lifted off the ground, preparing to fly toward Mos Eisley. Tell him I meant what I said. Everyone deserves a second chance, even him, especially him. Then he was gone, a streak of golden light shooting across the desert toward the Imperial forces, toward overwhelming odds, toward a battle that would determine whether this galaxy learned that tyranny could be challenged, or whether the Empire's grip would tighten further. Ben Kenobi stood alone at the cave entrance, watching Goku disappear into the distance. He closed his eyes and reached out through the Force, feeling the currents of destiny, shifting and realigning. The future was always in motion, always uncertain. But in this moment, he felt something he hadn't felt since the dark days after Order 66. He felt hope. May the Force be with you, Goku, Ben whispered to the desert wind, and may it guide your impossible heart to victory. In Mos Eisley, Darth Vader stood atop a command platform that overlooked the assembled Imperial forces. 2 AT-AT walkers flanked the main avenue, their weapons trained on the desert approaches. Stormtrooper battalions were positioned at every intersection, with heavy weapons emplacements and shield generators, creating overlapping fields of fire. TIE fighters circled overhead in holding patterns, ready to strafe any target that presented itself. It was overwhelming force, designed not just to defeat an enemy, but to annihilate them so thoroughly that no trace remained. The target will not escape this time, General Veers reported, standing at attention beside Vader. Every approach is covered. The moment he appears, we'll have him in a kill box with no avenue of retreat. He will come, Vader said with certainty. He is too naive to recognize the trap and too principled to allow innocent civilians to suffer. When he arrives, focus all fire on him immediately. Do not allow him time to build power or transform. Yes, Lord Vader. And if he survives the initial barrage, he won't. Vader's hand moved to his lightsaber. But if by some miracle he does, I will finish what we began. Even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at him. The Emperor had ordered Goku's death. Tactical sense demanded it. Every principle Vader had followed for 20 years supported the decision. So why did it feel like a mistake? A sensor operator called out, "My lord. Contact inbound, approaching at high speed. It's him!" Vader turned toward the desert, and there, silhouetted against the setting twin suns, he saw a golden light streaking toward the city like a falling star. "All units," Vader commanded into his comlink. "Fire at will." The sky erupted with weapons fire as Goku came to face an army, armed with nothing but his power, his principles, and the lightsaber of a fallen Jedi who had once believed, like Goku, that everyone deserved redemption. The Battle of Mos Eisley had begun. The opening salvo was designed to obliterate a starship. Hundreds of blaster bolts converged on Goku's position as he streaked toward Mos Eisley, the air itself seeming to ignite from the sheer volume of energy weapons fire. The AT-AT walkers added their heavy cannons to the barrage, their shots powerful enough to punch through reinforced bunkers. TIE fighters dove from above, adding their twin laser cannons to the deadly crossfire that turned the sky into a web of destructive energy. Goku saw it all in slow motion, his combat-honed instincts processing the incoming fire with perfect clarity. He twisted mid-flight, his body moving with impossible grace as he threaded through gaps in the energy barrage that existed for milliseconds before closing. Blaster bolts passed within centimeters of his body, close enough that he felt the heat, but not the impact. The ones he couldn't dodge, he deflected. His hands became a blur, swatting aside energy bolts with Kai-enhanced palms that dispersed the weapon's fire harmlessly. To the stormtroopers watching through their helmet displays, it looked like the anomaly was casually batting away lethal weapons fire as if they were annoying insects. "Increase fire rate," General Veers ordered, his professional calm cracking slightly. "All units, maximum sustained fire." The barrage intensified, hundreds of weapons firing simultaneously in a coordinated pattern designed to eliminate any possible escape route. The AT-ATs walked forward, their massive feet crushing buildings as they advanced, creating fields of fire that overlapped and crossed, leaving nowhere to run. Goku landed in the center of the killing zone, boots touching sand, and his aura exploded outward in a golden sphere that deflected the incoming fire. Energy bolts struck the Ki barrier and scattered, ricocheting into buildings or dissipating harmlessly against the shield. "Is that all you've got?" Goku called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield despite the weapon's fire. "Because I really hoped we could talk instead of fight." "Talking is for diplomats," Vader's mechanical voice boomed from the command platform. "This is war. At units. Concentrated fire on target." Both walkers pivoted, their main cannons charging with visible energy buildup. Then, they fired simultaneously, twin beams of coherent energy that could reduce Durasteel armor to slag, converging on Goku's position. Goku crossed his arms in front of his face and braced, pouring ki into his defensive aura. The beams struck him like twin hammers, and even with his enhanced durability, he felt the impact. The ground beneath him cracked, then shattered, creating a crater as the sustained fire drove him downward. His boots sank into the sand as he struggled against the pressure, his aura flickering under the sustained assault. The walkers maintained fire for 10 full seconds, an eternity in combat, before their power cells demanded a cooling cycle. When the beams finally cut off, smoke and dust obscured the impact site completely. "Target eliminated," an officer reported, checking sensors. "No life signs detected in the impact zone." Vader stood silent, reaching out through the Force. And there, still burning bright, that impossible presence that shouldn't exist. "He lives. All units. Maintain alertness." The smoke cleared, revealing Goku still standing in a crater, 5 meters deep. His orange gi was scorched and torn in places, his skin showing minor burns, but he was very much alive. He looked up at the AT-AT walkers, his expression more annoyed than hurt. "Okay," Goku said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "I gave you a chance to stand down. I tried to do this peacefully. But if you're going to keep shooting at me, then I guess we're doing this the hard way." His hair flickered, black to gold and back again. He was still holding back the full transformation, conserving energy. But what he released was enough to make the ground shake. Goku bent his knees and launched himself upward, moving so fast he seemed to simply teleport. One moment, he was in the crater. The next, he was beside the lead AT-AT's head, one fist drawn back. He punched once, a single, precise strike to the walker's viewport, The reinforced transparasteel, designed to withstand direct weapons fire, shattered like glass. The walker's head tore free from its body, with a screech of rending metal, and the massive machine toppled sideways, its legs unable to compensate for the sudden imbalance. It crashed into a building with a thunderous impact that shook the entire district. The pilots ejected at the last second, their emergency systems launching them clear of the wreckage. Goku made no move to pursue them. He wasn't here to kill people. He was here to stop the killing. The second AT-AT attempted to track him, but Goku was already moving. He landed on its back and drove both hands into the armor plating, his ki allowing him to tear through the hull like tissue paper. Inside, he could sense the crew's terror, their heart rates spiking as they realized their invincible war machine had been breached. "Get out!" Goku said firmly, his voice carrying through the torn hull. "I'm not going to hurt you, but you need to abandon this thing. Now." The crew didn't need to be told twice. Emergency hatches blew open and pilots scrambled out, sliding down cables to reach the ground. Goku waited until they were clear, then ripped out the walker's main power core, a massive cylindrical unit that pulsed with energy. He crushed it between his hands, shorting out the walker's systems harmlessly. The massive machine went still, now nothing more than an expensive piece of scrap metal. Vader watched this from his command platform, his tactical mind processing what he'd just witnessed. The anomaly had disabled two AT-AT walkers, machines worth millions of credits each, manned by trained crews in less than 30 seconds. And he'd done it without killing a single person. This wasn't just power. This was precision and restraint, combined to a degree Vader had rarely witnessed. "Ground forces advance," Vader commanded. "Surround and overwhelm. Do not give him room to maneuver. TIE fighters, strafing runs at my mark." Stormtroopers advanced in disciplined formations, their training overriding their fear. They fired in coordinated volleys, creating overlapping fields of fire that forced Goku to keep moving. He wove between the blaster bolts, his speed making him nearly impossible to hit. But the sheer volume of fire prevented him from counterattacking effectively. The TIE fighters screamed overhead, their laser cannons stitching lines of destruction across the ground. Goku leapt skyward to avoid the strafing run, but that put him in the open air, where dozens of stormtroopers had clear shots. Bolts converged on his position from every direction. Goku spun mid-air, his body rotating like a top, and released a burst of ki in all directions. Ki! The omnidirectional shockwave scattered the incoming fire and sent the nearest stormtroopers tumbling backward, their armor protecting them from serious injury, but knocking them out of the fight. Goku landed in a clear space and immediately had to dodge as a TIE fighter came in for another pass, its cannons blazing. He reached out with one hand as the fighter passed overhead and grabbed its wing with ki-enhanced grip. The TIE's momentum carried it forward, but Goku's strength was absolute. The fighter spun out of control, and Goku guided its trajectory into an empty section of desert outside the city limits, where it crashed in a shower of sparks, but without casualties. "He's not killing them," General Veers observed, reviewing combat footage. "He has multiple opportunities for lethal strikes, but he's deliberately avoiding them." "A weakness," Vader replied. "One we can exploit. Bring in the civilians." "My lord, you heard me. Bring civilians into the combat zone. He values innocent life. We will use that against him." Veers hesitated for only a moment before saluting. "Yes, Lord Vader." Stormtroopers moved through the surrounding buildings, roughly herding civilians, humans, Twi'leks, Rhodians, dozens of species, into the streets at gunpoint. They formed a living barrier between the Imperial forces and Goku, ensuring that any wide-area attack would kill innocents. Goku saw what they were doing and felt his anger surge. "You're using them as shields. That's low, even for you." "War requires difficult decisions," Vader called out, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. "Surrender now, and these civilians will be released unharmed. Continue fighting, and their blood will be on your hands." Goku's fists clenched, his aura flickering dangerously. Every instinct screamed at him to transform fully, to unleash his power and end this fight decisively. But with civilians in the line of fire, he couldn't risk it. A single stray ki blast could kill dozens. He was trapped, and Vader knew it. Your compassion is admirable, Vader continued, descending from his command platform and walking forward, lightsaber ignited. But in war, compassion is a luxury that gets people killed. You should have struck decisively when you had the chance. Now, you will die knowing your mercy was your downfall. I'd rather die trying to do the right thing than live doing the wrong thing, Goku shot back. He drew Anakin's lightsaber, the blue blade igniting with a snap hiss that echoed across the battlefield. And I'm not done trying yet. Vader paused mid-stride, his breathing apparatus the only sound for several heartbeats. He was staring at the lightsaber in Goku's hands, Anakin's lightsaber, the weapon Vader himself had once wielded as a Jedi Knight. Seeing it in the hands of this stranger, this anomaly who preached redemption and second chances, hit harder than any physical blow. Where did you get that? Vader's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried deadly promise. Ben gave it to me, Goku replied honestly. He said it belonged to Luke's father, to Anakin Skywalker, to you, before you became this. Anakin Skywalker is dead. Vader's roar was raw with emotion, the dark side swirling around him like a visible storm. I killed him, just as I killed the weakness and sentiment that defined him. No, you didn't. Goku's voice was quiet but firm. He's still in there, Vader. I can feel it. Buried under all that anger and pain, but still there. Still fighting. That's why you hesitated before. That's why you're stalling now instead of just attacking. Some part of you doesn't want to do this. You know nothing. Vader charged forward, his crimson blade cutting crimson arcs through the air. Goku met the charge, blue blade rising to intercept red. The lightsabers clashed with a sound like thunder, energy meeting energy in a shower of sparks. They fought in the shadow of ruined AT-ATs, surrounded by watching stormtroopers and terrified civilians, two warriors wielding weapons from the same tradition, but fighting for opposite philosophies. Vader's style was perfection itself. Decades of experience refined into killing art. Goku's technique was raw, improvised, but backed by instincts honed through a lifetime of combat. The lightsabers wove patterns of light and shadow. Blue and red, hope and despair, made manifest in plasma blades that could cut through anything but each other. They moved faster than normal eyes could follow, each strike and counterstrike a conversation conducted in violence. You fight well with a weapon you've never trained with, Vader admitted grudgingly, their blades locked together. But skill alone won't save you. It's not about saving myself, Goku grunted, pushing back against Vader's strength. It's about showing you there's another way, that you can still choose to be better than what the Empire made you. The Empire didn't make me. Vader broke the lock and spun, his blade cutting horizontally at neck height. Goku ducked under it and rolled, coming up with his own slash that Vader barely parried. I chose this path. I chose power over weakness, and I would make the same choice again. Would you? Goku deactivated his lightsaber, and, in the split second of Vader's surprise, caught the Sith Lord's blade with his bare hand. It burned, gods it burned, but his Kai held. Would you really choose this life if you could go back? The pain, the isolation, the knowledge that everyone who ever loved you thinks you're dead, or worse? Vader's free hand shot forward, releasing a torrent of force lightning. The blue-white energy arced through the air and struck Goku full in the chest, and this time there was no Kai defense that could fully stop it. The lightning was dark side energy, anathema to life itself, and it tore through Goku's defenses with agonizing efficiency. Goku screamed, his body convulsing as electricity coursed through him. But even as the pain threatened to overwhelm him, he didn't let go of Vader's lightsaber blade. He held on, enduring the torture, meeting Vader's masked gaze with eyes that held no hatred despite the agony. I don't hate you, Goku forced out between spasms. I could never hate someone who's hurting this much. Vader increased the intensity of the lightning, pouring more dark side energy into the attack. Goku's skin began to smoke, his GI burning away in places. But still, impossibly, he held on to the lightsaber. Still, he stared at Vader with those eyes full of compassion that Vader didn't deserve, couldn't accept, refused to acknowledge. "Why won't you hate me?" Vader roared, his carefully controlled emotions finally cracking. "I'm trying to kill you. I've killed thousands. I deserve your hatred." "Because," Goku gasped, his hand trembling but still gripping the blade, "hating you would be easy." "But easy isn't right." The Force lightning cut off abruptly. Vader stood frozen, his hands still extended, his breathing harsh and ragged, even through the mechanical filters. Around them, the battlefield had gone silent. Stormtroopers, civilians, even General Veers on the command platform. Everyone watched the impossible tableau of a warrior enduring torture rather than abandon his belief in redemption. Goku finally released Vader's blade and collapsed to his knees, smoke rising from his burned skin. But he was smiling, actually smiling, despite the pain. "See, you stopped. Some part of you didn't want to kill me. That's the part. That's still Anakin." Vader's lightsaber wavered in his grip. In his mind, he heard echoes of other voices, other times. Padme dying in his arms, asking if there was still good in him. Obi-Wan pleading with him not to take the final step into darkness. Ahsoka, his former Padawan, expressing shock and heartbreak at what he'd become. And now this stranger, this impossible anomaly who had every reason to hate him, offering compassion instead. The dark side screamed at him to finish it, to strike down this threat before his words did more damage than his fists ever could. But for the first time in 20 years, Darth Vader hesitated, and in that hesitation everything changed. The silence stretched across the battlefield like a held breath. Every eye was fixed on the two warriors, one kneeling and burned, the other standing with lightsaber raised but not striking. The moment balanced on a knife's edge, pregnant with possibility. Then, the choice was taken away from both of them. "Lord Vader," General Veer's voice crackled over the comlink, urgent and strained. "We're receiving reports of rebel activity in orbit. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. X-Wings, Y-Wings, and what appears to be a modified Corellian corvette. They're engaging our blockade." Vader's head snapped toward the sky, his attention momentarily diverted. Through the Force, he could feel it. The currents of battle shifting, new players entering the game. The rebellion had somehow learned of the Imperial buildup on Tatooine and was mounting a response. Goku used the moment of distraction to gather his strength. His Saiyan healing factor was already working on the lightning burns, cellular regeneration accelerating beyond human norms. He pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly but upright. "Looks like you've got bigger problems than me," Goku said, his voice strained but steady. Above them, the sky erupted with fire. Turbolaser batteries from the Star Destroyers lit up space with emerald death, while nimble rebel fighters wove between the massive capital ships, their red laser cannons returning fire. A TIE fighter exploded in a brilliant fireball, followed by another, then an X-Wing cartwheeled out of control, its wing sheared off by a lucky shot. "All units," Vader commanded into his comlink, his tactical mind immediately assessing the new threat. "Maintain ground positions. TIE squadrons. Intercept the rebel fighters. They must not—" He stopped mid-sentence as a new presence made itself known through the Force. Not in orbit. Not in the city. Somewhere close, approaching fast. A presence he recognized, one that stirred memories nearly 2 decades old. "Kenobi," Vader breathed, his mechanical voice carrying a note of something that might have been anticipation or dread. Ben Kenobi emerged from the desert on a stolen land speeder, his robes billowing behind him, his lightsaber already ignited. The old Jedi leapt from the moving vehicle with grace that belied his years, landing between Goku and Vader, with his blue blade held in the classic defensive stance of Form 3. "Hello, old friend," Ben said quietly, his voice carrying weight beyond the simple words. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," Vader replied, but there was something in his posture, a tension that spoke of unfinished business. "You should have stayed hidden, Kenobi. Now you will die." "Perhaps," Ben acknowledged, But not before we have a reckoning that's been delayed far too long. He glanced at Goku. Can you stand? Yeah, Goku said, shaking off the last effects of the Force lightning. His aura flickered gold around the edges as his ki restored itself. But Ben, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Ben's expression was serene, almost peaceful. This is my failure to address, my student to face. You've done more than anyone had right to ask, Goku. You've shown him that compassion still exists in this galaxy. Now, let me show him that the light side hasn't abandoned him, even if he thinks he's abandoned it. Vader's grip on his lightsaber tightened. Your philosophy died with the Jedi Order. The light side is weak. Sentiment is weakness, and you will learn that lesson one final time before I end you. Then come, Ben said simply. Let us finish what we began on Mustafar. The two former master and apprentice circled each other, their lightsabers humming. Around them the battle continued. Stormtroopers maintaining perimeters, civilians cowering in buildings, orbital combat raging overhead. But in that moment, the universe seemed to contract to just the two of them and the history they shared. Vader struck first, his crimson blade cutting downward with controlled fury. Ben parried, their blades meeting with that characteristic electric snap, and they began the deadly dance they'd learned together decades ago. Master and apprentice, now on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. But even as they fought, Goku could see it. Ben wasn't trying to win. His movements were defensive, focused on survival rather than victory. He was stalling, buying time for something. Goku! Ben called out between blade exchanges. The civilians! Get them to safety while Vader is occupied. Understanding flooded through Goku. This was Ben's plan. Create a distraction, give Goku time to do what he did best. Save people. Goku didn't waste time arguing. He deactivated Anakin's lightsaber and clipped it to his belt, then moved. Not attacking stormtroopers, not engaging Imperial forces, but darting between their lines to reach the terrified civilians being used as shields. Come on, he shouted to a Twi'lek family huddled against a wall. I'll get you out of here. He scooped up two children under his arms and gestured for their parents to follow. Stay close and move fast. Stormtroopers turned their weapons on him. But Goku was already moving, carrying the children to safety behind a collapsed building while their parents ran behind. He returned immediately for more, his speed allowing him to evacuate dozens of people in the time it took the Imperial forces to reposition. Stop him, General Veers ordered. Fire on the target. Sir, the civilians! I said fire. Blaster bolts filled the air, but Goku wove between them with the children still in his arms, protecting them with his body when necessary. A bolt grazed his shoulder. Another burned across his back, but he didn't slow down. Pain was temporary. These lives mattered more. As Goku worked to evacuate civilians, Ben and Vader's duel intensified. The old Jedi's movements were elegant and economical. Sorasu's defensive perfection, allowing him to turn aside Vader's attacks with minimal effort. But it was a delaying action, not a winning one. Ben was older now, his body not what it had been, and Vader's dark side-enhanced power was relentless. You've grown weak, Vader observed, pressing his attack. The Obi-Wan Kenobi I knew would have already struck a dozen killing blows. The Anakin Skywalker I knew wouldn't be trying to kill me, Ben countered, parrying a particularly vicious strike. But we're both different people now, aren't we? The question is, which one of us changed for the better? I am stronger than I ever was as a Jedi. Vader's blade came down like a hammer, and Ben barely deflected it, the impact driving him to one knee. Stronger in the dark side, perhaps, Ben gasped, using the Force to push Vader back and regain his footing, but weaker in spirit. Anakin, please, it's not too late. What Goku said was true. You can still turn back. Don't call me that name. Vader unleashed a Force push that sent Ben tumbling backward. Anakin Skywalker died the day Padme died. The day you left me to burn. I didn't leave you to die, Ben said quietly, climbing to his feet. I left you because I couldn't bring myself to finish you. Because despite everything, some part of me still believed you could be saved. I see now that was selfish of me. I should have ended your pain on Mustafar. Instead, I let it fester into this. Their blades clashed again, blue against red, and this time Ben shifted to offense. His strikes were precise, targeted at joints in Vader's armor, testing defenses, searching for weaknesses. For a moment, he was the legendary Jedi Master who had defeated General Grievous, who had survived Order 66, who had once been called the Negotiator for his diplomatic prowess and the Warrior for his blade work. Vader recognized the shift and adapted, his own style becoming more aggressive to match. They moved through the ruined street like dancers performing a deadly ballet, their blades writing stories in light and shadow. In orbit, the battle was turning. The rebellion's surprise attack had caught the Imperial fleet off guard, and while they were outnumbered, the rebel pilots' skill and desperation gave them an edge. An X-Wing's proton torpedoes struck a Star Destroyer's bridge, killing its command crew and sending the massive ship into an uncontrolled drift. TIE fighters fell like rain, though rebel ships were being destroyed as well. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos that would be remembered as one of the minor engagements of the Galactic Civil War, except for what was happening on the ground. Goku had evacuated the last civilian, a young human boy, maybe 6 years old, who reminded him painfully of Gohan, when he saw Ben stumble. Vader's blade had gotten through the old Jedi's defense, scoring a glancing hit across his shoulder. Not deep, not fatal, but enough to slow him down. "Ben!" Goku moved without thinking, covering the distance in a heartbeat and interposing himself between Vader and the wounded Jedi. "That's enough!" "It will never be enough," Vader said coldly. "Not until Kenobi pays for his betrayal." "His betrayal?" Goku's eyes flashed with anger. "He spent 20 years blaming himself for what happened to you, carrying guilt for not being able to save you. And you call that betrayal? He should have killed me when he had the chance," Vader roared. "Instead, he let me live in this broken shell, neither fully alive nor mercifully dead. That is the greatest betrayal of all. False mercy that leaves you to suffer." Goku stared at Vader, and suddenly he understood. The anger, the hatred, the embrace of the dark side, it was all armor. Protection against the pain of existing in a body that had been destroyed, kept alive by machines. Serving a master he might not even believe in anymore. Trapped in a hell of his own making. "You're right," Goku said quietly, and both Vader and Ben went still. "Ben should have finished you on Mustafar. Not because you deserved death, but because living like this, in constant pain and anger, is worse than death. But it's not too late to change that." "There is no change," Vader stated. "Only the path I walk." "Then change the path!" Goku's aura flared golden, his frustration boiling over. "You're one of the most powerful beings in this galaxy. You answer to an emperor who rules through fear. If you wanted to, you could change everything. You could overthrow him, reform the Empire, bring justice instead of tyranny. And that would require hope," Vader said, his mechanical voice carrying a note of bitter amusement. "Hope that change is possible. Hope that redemption exists. Hope that a monster can become a man again. I abandoned hope the day Padme died, and without hope, there is only the dark side." "Then I'll carry hope for both of us," Goku declared. He powered up, golden aura exploding around him, hair shifting to spiky gold as he finally embraced the Super Saiyan transformation fully. The ground fractured beneath his feet, and his power became a physical pressure that made even Vader take a step back. "I'll show you that there's always hope, that redemption is always possible, that second chances exist even for people who think they don't deserve them. And I'll do it the only way you seem to understand, by being so strong that you have no choice but to believe me." Ben, clutching his wounded shoulder, watched with wide eyes as Goku's transformation completed. The Golden Warrior stood between two Sith and Jedi, embodying a philosophy that transcended both light and dark. Pure strength, not in service of either side, but in service of simple, undeniable compassion. "Goku," Ben said softly, "be careful. If you push him too hard—" "I know the risks," Goku interrupted gently, "but some things are worth the risk." He turned back to Vader, his expression serious but not hateful. "One more time, Vader. Walk away from this fight. Walk away from the Empire. Walk away from the dark side. Choose to be better. Choose to be Anakin Skywalker again." Vader stood silent for a long moment, Around them, the battle raged. Rebels dying in space, stormtroopers maintaining perimeter, General Veers shouting orders, civilians hiding in ruins. But in that moment, the only thing that mattered was the choice before him. Finally, Vader raised his lightsaber. "You are a fool," he said, "but you are a brave fool. Very well. Let us see if your strength can match your conviction." The crimson blade ignited fully, held in a two-handed grip that suggested Vader was done holding back. The dark side swirled around him like a storm, drawing on reserves of power he rarely tapped, pulling from pain and anger and 2 decades of suffering. Goku settled into his fighting stance, Ki and Super Saiyan power making him shine like a beacon in the gathering dusk. Ben's lightsaber hummed at his belt, a reminder of the legacy he carried. And in the sky above, a rebel corvette broke through the Imperial blockade, vectoring toward the surface, toward Mos Eisley. The final confrontation was about to begin, not just between 2 warriors, but between 2 philosophies, between darkness that sought to justify itself and light that refused to abandon anyone, no matter how far they'd fallen. "Show me," Vader commanded, his stance shifting into something Goku hadn't seen before. Pure, focused killing intent, refined to its absolute essence. "Show me this hope you carry. Prove that redemption exists. Because if you fail, if I kill you here, then I will know beyond all doubt that I chose correctly when I embrace the dark side." "And when I prove you wrong?" Goku asked, his golden aura crackling with barely restrained power. Vader's answer was to attack, his lightsaber cutting a crimson arc toward Goku's heart. And the true battle, the one that would determine whether Darth Vader remained a servant of darkness or finally faced the possibility of redemption, began in earnest. The clash between Super Saiyan and Sith Lord shattered what remained of Mos Eisley's central district. Vader struck with Form 7, Juyo, the ferocity form, abandoning defensive technique for pure aggression. His crimson blade wove patterns of death faster than human eyes could track, each strike channeling decades of rage and pain through the dark side. He drew on every ounce of his power, every enhancement his cybernetics offered, every technique he'd learned from Palpatine and perfected through countless battles. And Goku met him blow for blow. The Super Saiyan's speed was beyond anything Vader had faced. He didn't just dodge the lightsaber strikes, he flowed between them, his body moving with martial arts mastery that made combat look like dance. When Vader thrust toward his heart, Goku's hand was there first, catching the blade with ki-enhanced palm and redirecting it. When Vader slashed horizontally, Goku leaned backward at an impossible angle, the plasma blade passing millimeters from his nose. "You're holding back again," Vader accused, his mechanical breathing harsh with exertion. "Fight me with everything you have." "I am fighting," Goku shot back, delivering a punch that Vader barely deflected with a force barrier. The impact still sent the Sith Lord skidding backward, boots carving trenches in the sand. "I'm just not trying to kill you. There's a difference," Vader responded with force lightning, both hands unleashing torrents of dark side energy. But this time, Goku was ready, his aura intensified, golden ki forming a protective shell that the lightning struck and scattered, unable to penetrate. Goku walked forward through the electric storm, his expression determined. "That won't work twice," Goku said. "I understand it now. That lightning isn't just electricity. It's concentrated hatred and pain given form. And I'm not going to let your pain hurt me anymore." He closed the distance between them in an instant and delivered a spinning kick that Vader barely blocked with his lightsaber. The impact still lifted the Sith Lord off his feet and sent him crashing through a cantina wall. Vader emerged from the rubble, his armor cracked in several new places, warning lights flashing across his chest panel with increasing urgency. Structural damage. Life support compromised. Respiratory system at 60% efficiency. He was dying, slowly but surely, and they both knew it. "You see?" Vader rasped, his mechanical voice glitching. "This is what your mercy accomplishes. You break me piece by piece, extending my suffering, when a killing blow would be kinder. I'm not going to kill you. Goku's shout carried across the battlefield. I don't care how damaged you get, I don't care how much you push me. I'm not going to be the one who ends your life. Because that would mean giving up on you, and I don't give up on people. Something in Vader's chest, not his mechanical heart, but something deeper, twisted painfully at those words. This stranger, this anomaly, who had known him for less than a day, had more faith in him than he had in himself. More faith than Obi-Wan had shown when he'd left him to burn. More faith than Padme had shown when she'd recoiled from what he'd become. It was infuriating. It was impossible. It was everything Anakin Skywalker had once believed before the darkness took him. Why? Vader asked, and for the first time, his voice carried genuine confusion rather than anger. Why do you care what happens to me? I'm your enemy. I serve an empire built on oppression. I've killed thousands. Given the chance, I would have killed you. Why would you show me mercy I don't deserve? Goku powered down slightly, his aura dimming to conversational levels, while still maintaining Super Saiyan form. Because someone showed me mercy once. Actually, lots of people showed me mercy. My grandpa found me as a baby, and raised me instead of leaving me to die. Master Roshi trained me, even though I was reckless and stubborn. Piccolo tried to kill me and my friends, but I saw good in him, and he became one of my greatest allies. Vegeta came to Earth to destroy it, but I gave him a second chance, and now he fights to protect it. He took a step closer to Vader. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even people who think they're beyond saving. Especially people who think they're beyond saving, because they're the ones who need it most. Vader's lightsaber trembled in his grip. Behind his mask, tears he thought impossible in his ruined body somehow found a way to fall. I killed her, he whispered, the confession torn from somewhere deep inside. Padme, my wife, the only person who ever loved me unconditionally. I killed her because I couldn't accept that I wasn't strong enough to save her. And then I blamed Obi-Wan. I blamed the Jedi. I blamed everyone but myself, because facing that truth would have destroyed what little remained of me. Then face it now, Goku said gently. Face what you did. Accept that you were wrong, and choose to do better going forward. That's what redemption is. Not erasing the past, but refusing to let it define your future. The Emperor would never allow. Then fight him. Goku's voice rose with passion. You're powerful enough. I can feel it. You could overthrow Palpatine if you wanted to. You could change the Empire from within, or tear it down and build something better. But first, you have to want to change. You have to choose to be Anakin Skywalker again. Vader's lightsaber deactivated. He stood there, a broken figure in black armor, and for the first time in 20 years, considered the possibility. What if he did fight back? What if he turned on Palpatine, challenged the Sith tradition that had defined his existence? What if he chose just once to do something, not because it increased his power or served the Empire, but because it was right? The very thought was terrifying and liberating. Vader began, his mechanical voice failing. I don't know if I can. The dark side, it's all I have left. Without it, I'm just broken machinery and failed potential. No! Ben Kenobi's voice cut through the moment. The old Jedi had been watching silently, his shoulder wound forgotten as he witnessed the impossible, his former apprentice considering redemption. Without the dark side, you're Anakin Skywalker, my friend, my brother, the best man I ever knew, underneath all the pain and anger. And Anakin, if you can hear me, I'm sorry. Sorry I failed you as a teacher. Sorry I left you on Mustafar. Sorry I gave up on you when you needed me most. Vader turned toward his old master, and something in his posture, the way his shoulders slumped, the way his head bowed, spoke of exhaustion beyond physical. Obi-Wan, A shuttle screamed overhead, interrupting the moment. It bore the markings of the Rebel Alliance, and as it descended rapidly toward their position, Goku's enhanced hearing picked up voices inside. Young voices, frightened but determined. Is that him? Someone asked. The Golden Warrior. Sensors confirm massive energy readings, another voice replied, and 2 force signatures, one dark, one light. We need to extract Kenobi before... The shuttle's landing ramp dropped before it fully touched down, and a young man leaped out. He was barely out of his teens, with shaggy blonde hair, wearing the orange flight suit of a rebel pilot. In his hand, he carried a blaster, and his eyes, blue, earnest, determined, were fixed on Vader. "Get away from Ben," the young man shouted, raising his weapon. "I don't know who you are or what's happening here, but I won't let you hurt him." Goku saw it instantly, the resemblance. The same eyes, the same facial structure, even the same earnest determination. This was Luke, the boy Ben had been watching over, the son Vader didn't know existed. Vader saw it too. Through the Force, he felt the connection, a bond of blood he'd thought impossible. His son, his and Padme's son, alive, grown, standing before him. Not dead with Padme, alive. "Luke," Vader breathed the name like a prayer. "How do you know my name?" Luke demanded, his blaster unwavering despite his obvious fear. Ben moved forward, placing himself between Luke and Vader. "Luke, wait! This isn't... He's my son," Vader said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "Padme was pregnant. I thought the child died with her. But you're here. You're alive." His mechanical breathing hitched, emotion overwhelming even his respiratory control. "You're my son." Luke's blaster dropped slightly, his expression shifting from determined to confused to horrified. "No, that's impossible. My father was a Jedi, a hero. He died fighting people like you." "I lied to you," Ben said quietly, his voice heavy with decades of guilt. "Your father was Anakin Skywalker, Luke, and Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. I thought it kinder to let you believe he died rather than know what he'd become. I was wrong. You deserved the truth." Luke stared at Vader, his world crumbling. You're my father? You're the monster who hunts Jedi and serves the Emperor? You're the reason the galaxy lives in fear?" "Yes," Vader said simply. There was no point in denying it. "I am all of those things. I am your father, and I am a monster. And if you want to shoot me, I won't stop you. Perhaps it's fitting that my own son be the one to end this." Luke's hand trembled, the blaster wavering between aiming and lowering. Goku could see the conflict written across the young man's face, the desire for vengeance warring with something deeper, something that looked like desperate hope that this wasn't real, that it couldn't be true. "Don't do it, Luke," Goku said gently. "Not like this. Not while you're angry. That's what the dark side feeds on, making you act when you're hurting. Take a breath. Think it through." "Who are you to tell me what to do?" Luke snapped, but there were tears in his eyes now. "He's a murderer. He's killed thousands. He deserves..." "To face justice, yes," Goku interrupted. "But not execution without trial. Not murder disguised as revenge. You're better than that. I can see it. Ben can see it. And I think deep down, your father can see it too." Vader made no move to defend himself, no attempt to use the Force or reach for his weapon. He simply stood there, a broken figure waiting for his son's judgment. In orbit above, the battle had reached a tipping point. The rebels, though outnumbered, had managed to disable or destroy enough Imperial ships to create an escape corridor. Evacuation shuttles were launching from the surface, carrying the civilians Goku had saved to safety aboard rebel vessels. General Veer's voice crackled over Vader's damaged comlink. "Lord Vader, we're being overrun. Requesting orders." Vader didn't respond. His entire focus was on the young man before him, his son, wielding the power of choice. Would Luke choose revenge? Would he prove that Vader's belief in the dark side's dominance was correct? Or would he choose mercy, proving that Goku's impossible philosophy might actually have merit? Luke's finger tightened on the trigger. Then, with visible effort, he lowered the weapon. "I won't kill you," Luke said, his voice shaking. "Not because you don't deserve it, not because I've forgiven you, but because becoming a killer, even to kill a killer, would make me like you. And I refuse to be like you." The words hit Vader harder than any physical blow could have. His son, his own flesh and blood, had faced the same choice Anakin once faced on Mustafar. Light or dark, mercy or revenge. And Luke had chosen differently, had chosen better. "You're stronger than I was," Vader said quietly. stronger than Anakin Skywalker ever was. You choose mercy where I chose power. Perhaps there is still hope for this galaxy after all. Above them, a massive star destroyer, the Devastator, began pulling out of orbit, retreating before the rebel assault could cause catastrophic damage. The remaining TIE fighters disengaged, fleeing to their carriers. On the ground, stormtroopers received orders to withdraw, falling back to their transports in organized retreat. The Battle of Mos Eisley was ending. Not with Imperial victory or decisive defeat, but with something rarer, a moment of genuine choice that might change everything. Vader turned to Goku. "You were right," he said. "I did have a choice. I've always had a choice. I simply lacked the courage to make it." He looked at his son, at Ben, at the golden warrior who had traveled across universes to remind him that redemption existed. "I don't know if I can be saved. The darkness runs deep, and I've committed sins that cannot be undone. But perhaps I can stop adding to them." "That's all anyone can ask," Goku said, smiling despite his exhaustion and injuries. "Start there. Stop hurting people. And then maybe start helping them instead." Vader's shuttle descended from the sky, its landing ramp extending. Stormtroopers waited inside, ready to evacuate their commander. But Vader didn't immediately move toward it. He stood there, facing the three people before him, his old master, his son, and the stranger who had shown him impossible compassion. "This isn't redemption," Vader said clearly. "This is barely even a beginning. But it is something. More than I had yesterday. More than I thought possible an hour ago." He turned toward the shuttle, then paused. "Goku, when you find your way home, and I believe you will, tell your people that somewhere in another universe, a broken man remembered what it meant to hope. Because of you." Then Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, enforcer of tyranny, walked toward his shuttle. But his steps were different, slower, more deliberate, like a man waking from a nightmare and not quite believing he was free. As the shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the sky, Luke turned to Goku. "What just happened? Did my father just turn away from the Empire?" "Not yet," Ben said thoughtfully, "but perhaps he took the first step, and sometimes that's the hardest step of all." Goku powered down from Super Saiyan, his hair fading back to black, his exhaustion finally catching up to him. He swayed, and Ben caught him before he could fall. "Easy," Ben said. "You've done enough for one day. More than enough." "Did I change anything?" Goku asked, his voice slurred with fatigue. "Or did I just delay the inevitable?" Luke looked at Ben, then at Goku, and something like wonder crossed his face. "I don't know what you are or where you came from, but you made Darth Vader, the most feared being in the galaxy, question everything he believes. If that's not changing something, I don't know what is." Ben smiled, and it was the first genuine smile of hope Goku had seen from the old Jedi. "The Force works in mysterious ways. Perhaps it brought you here not to destroy the Empire, but to plant a seed. What grows from that seed, well, that's for the future to determine." As rebel shuttles continued their evacuation and the Imperial forces withdrew, Mos Eisley began the slow process of recovery. Civilians emerged from hiding, surveying the damage but alive, because one golden warrior had refused to let them be used as shields. Medics rushed to treat the wounded on both sides, because warfare's aftermath cares nothing for faction. And somewhere in the vastness of space, aboard the Devastator, Darth Vader sat in his meditation chamber and removed his helmet. His scarred face stared back at him from the polished surface, but for the first time in 2 decades, he didn't look away in disgust. He had a son who had chosen mercy over revenge, a son who was strong in ways Vader had forgotten existed, and a stranger from another universe had shown him that the choice between light and dark wasn't permanent, wasn't absolute, wasn't the ending he'd resigned himself to. It was, perhaps, barely the beginning. The Emperor would need to be told of the day's events. Vader would face consequences for his failure, his hesitation, his moment of weakness, when he'd let sentiment override tactical sense. But as Vader reached for the communicator to make his report, he hesitated, just for a moment. And in that hesitation, something shifted, a crack in the armor of darkness he'd built around himself, letting in the barest sliver of light. He thought of Padme, of the man he'd been before the darkness took him, of the Jedi code he'd once sworn to uphold, and of a golden warrior who had refused to give up on him even when he'd given up on himself. Perhaps, Vader whispered to the empty chamber, redemption is possible after all. It was the first honest thing he'd said in 20 years.